Everyone, thank you all so much for being here today. I'd like to call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting of, what is today? May 23rd. It's been that kind of morning. We do thank you all so much for being here. We have to lead us in the invocation this morning, Dr. Walt Person, if you would all please rise. And then Mr. Reverend Person, if after you're done with the invocation, if you could lead us in the pledge, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Out of respect for the many faith traditions, I'll be praying in the Christian tradition. I ask you to join me as we pray together for this commission and this community. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful that you have blessed us with opportunity, health, vitality to be here this morning, to be participating in this commission meeting. Father, we are grateful that we live in such a wonderful community. We thank you for those that have been willing to give a portion of their life to the leadership of the work and the plans and the future and the present of our community. Father, be with all of those that are serving today. Be with everyone that is here today. Be especially with those that are serving as our first responders. Keep them safe. Keep our community safe. And Father, we ask that you bless us as you only know that we need, and only that much. And these things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor. We appreciate you being here this morning. We have quite a few proclamations and resolutions this morning. What we'll do is the board member who will be reading the proclamation or resolution will move it, and then whoever is here receiving that proclamation on behalf of the organization or entity will come up and say a few words, but please don't leave after you're done. If you would take a seat, and then at the end of all of the proclamations and resolutions, the board will come down to the floor and we'll take pictures together. So come up and speak and say all the things that you'd like to say, but then don't leave. Go back and take a seat if you would. Our first proclamation this morning is recognizing our Veteran of the Month.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say a few moments that as we approach Memorial Day weekend that's before us, that we keep in memory of why we're able to gather here today and the peace we have in this country and the people that pay the ultimate price for us to have these liberties that we so much enjoy. So it's my pleasure to enter this proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Navy Seaman William F. Hyde for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us there are few more Americans than giving ourselves to make a difference in their lives of others. Whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures, even their lives, on the line to valiantly defend our nation. Whereas for many service members, the sacrifices ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in a continued preservation of our freedoms and a promise of liberty. Whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war. Through their service, they kept America strong. Whereas Seaman William F. Hyde enlisted in the United States Navy in January 1969 and proudly served on board the USS Forrestal CV-59 until he was honorably separated in December of 1972. Whereas Seaman William F. Hyde returned to his home in Florida in 1973, where he worked for IBM and General Electric for 13 years. Later, in 1991, he was elected mayor of Dania Beach, Florida. Following his second term as mayor, he joined the Merchant Marines in 2002. He was responsible for moving fuel and ammunition in support of Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. His efforts earned him the Merchant Marine Expeditionary Award, the only ribbon that can be awarded by the Merchant Marines. While performing these supportive assignments for the military, he and his family moved to Oviedo, and he continued to work for an additional 5 years. Upon separating from the Merchant Marines, he worked as a network administrator for DISTI, a simulations provider, for 5 years throughout Central Florida until fully retiring in 2012. And whereas Seaman William F. Hyde has been an invaluable member of the Oviedo American Legion Post 243 and the surrounding community for the past 14 years, he is a strong activist for making change for political process, advocating for local zoning issues, and federal concerns for Merchant Marines recognition during combat operations. Whereas Seaman William F. Hyde has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Navy, and Seminole County, now therefore be proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for William F. Hyde for his outstanding service to the United States Navy and the residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Seaman William F. Hyde, along with our sincere congratulations and recognitions to Seminole County's Veterans of the Month, adopted this 23rd day, May 2023.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr.
Great.
Hyde.
You would think this would be easy, considering the number of times that I've stood behind this microphone. It's not. Normally, I stand up here with no notes and just ramble on, but I had to put some things down to keep myself kind of focused. I attend quite a few meetings here, as you all know, and I have seen many of the Veterans of the Month presentations. Each and every one has a story of service, both to the military and to our community. Two of the many that come to mind are veterans like Ed Burford, whose service to veterans in Seminole County is legendary, and Joe Kittinger. Colonel Kittinger was an astronaut before there were astronauts. So standing here at this microphone like these guys is kind of intimidating. Making it more difficult was thinking about the Veterans Luncheon that we recently had, and a couple of other fellow Ovedans. John Cheney, who you guys all know and we all know, and those of us in my Legion post have been entertained many times during the coffee and chat. And Furpo Hurley. You may not know Furpo Hurley. He passed a few years ago. I had the honor of accompanying him as a guardian on an honor flight. And these two guys were more than military heroes. These guys were two of the unsung heroes of social change in this country, right here in Oviedo. So anything I've done in the military civilian life is small compared to those guys. But I am happy to be selected this month and sort of dedicate it to my Merchant Marine shipmates who are not considered veterans unless they were served in World War II, since we just had National Maritime Day. And my next crusade, just so you know, is going to be get recognition for Merchant Marines who serve in combat zones to be the same as all other veterans. We're fortunate here in Seminole County. We have a great veterans infrastructure. The staff here doesn't sit behind a desk all the time. They go out and meet veterans in the community. One-on-one. You don't have to even go to the office. The office comes to you here. This is not like 1972 when we came home, believe me, and we all appreciate it. I'm very fortunate to have the brothers and sisters of my Legion post who work to honor those who did not come home, and more than that, to make sure that those who do come home are welcome, cared for, and get the benefits that they deserve. We work not just to serve veterans, but the community at large. So I'm fortunate and honored to be here. I'm fortunate because a number of my classmates paid the sacrifice. But most of all, I'm fortunate here to have the most wonderful life partner that anyone could ever have. I have something that none of you have. I have hope. As you read through all those many years, what's left out is all the grief I put her through. When I decided to run for office, she had no idea what the ride that she was in for. Going to the grocery store, as some of you know, can be an adventure for the spouses of those who sit up there and take a lot of grief. And I'm fortunate because when I chose to run away and go to sea again after all those years, she willingly let me go. I'd come home from one ship and I'd say, well, I want to go this ocean, and she'd let me go. But I finally had sense enough to come home, and I know that you all know she is the love of my life. I thank you all for the honor, and I look forward to my next crusade. Thank you.
We all love the Hydes. Our meetings are not the same without you.
And I would add that the reason Bill's in such best behavior around Hope, she's a pretty good shot, too.
She is. Our next proclamation is affirming May 29th as Memorial Day.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a proclamation I move of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners affirming May 29th, 2023 as Memorial Day in Seminole County, Florida. Whereas on Memorial Day, we pay solemn tribute to those brave Americans who served under the Stars and Stripes and laid down their lives to defend our freedom. And whereas for more than a century, this holiday was known as Declaration Day and originally honored those lost while fighting in the Civil War. And whereas, following America's entry into World War I, Memorial Day evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whereas, in 1915, after spotting a cluster of poppies, a brigade surgeon was inspired to write the poem In Flanders Field, giving a voice to soldiers who had died in battle and lay buried beneath poppy-covered grounds. The poem initiated a movement to make the poppy a symbol of tribute to all who have died in war and remains an emblem of remembrance to this day. And whereas Congress, in a joint resolution approved May 11, 1950, provided that Memorial Day shall be set aside as a day of prayer for permanent peace, and requested President Truman to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to observe each Memorial Day in that manner. And whereas May 29th will mark the 153rd anniversary of Memorial Day, and whereas more than 1.2 million American soldiers have died in conflicts, and more than 8,000 of those soldiers were from Florida, and whereas today over 1.3 million Americans serve in active military duty, 107,000 of whom are from Florida, with nearly 1 million Americans serve in the Reserves and National Guard. And whereas on Memorial Day and every day, the citizens of Seminole County must remember the servicemen and women who sacrificed their lives to ensure our own. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners does hereby recognize May 29th, 2023 as Memorial Day, and be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners requests that at 3 p.m. on Memorial Day, Seminole County residents voluntarily observe in their own way a moment of remembrance and respect, pausing from whatever they are doing to honor our military heroes and their valor. Adopted this 23rd day of May 2023.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And I think we have from our own team, Jason Althouse from Veteran Services. Maybe we don't?
We don't.
Or we're shaking heads no?
Yeah, that was,
Then we
I
don't.
was scanning the room. So we will have all of the veterans come up at the time for a picture, or anyone else that would like to join us in honor of Memorial Day. Our next proclamation is for Emergency Medical Services Week.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming May 21st to the 27th, 2023 as Emergency Medical Services Week. And whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas members of the emergency medical team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill the gap by providing important out-of-hospital care by emergency medical services systems consistent with first responders, paramedics, emergency medical dispatch, firefighters, police officers, doctors, nurses, administrators, and members of the public. And whereas members of the emergency medical service team engage in thousands of hours of service, specialized training, and continual education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishment of the emergency medical services providers designating Emergency Medical Week. Now therefore be proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, proclaim the week of May 21 to 27, 2023 as Emergency Medical Service Week, whereas emergency care begins in honor of the men and women who diligently and professionally provide emergency medical services to our citizens and visitors, adopted this 23rd day of May 2023.
There's a motion. Second by Commissioner Zembauer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I believe we have Fire Chief Matt Kinley.
Good morning. For the record, Matt Kinley, Fire Chief, and Mr. Hyde, as always, a very hard act to follow. So I'll try to keep it brief. Just on behalf of everyone within the Seminole County Fire Department, we want to thank the citizens of Seminole County, the board, and the county manager's office for your continued and unwavering support and demanding that we provide the best emergency and most effective emergency medical system in the country. And that's not just our firefighter, EMTs, and paramedics, as the proclamation indicates. That goes from the street level to us going into a home all the way to the trauma centers that we have within Seminole County. This is just really an incredible place and safe place to live and play. I'd also be remiss if I did not take a moment to thank our men and women within the Seminole County Fire Department, our firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics, for everything that they do every second of every day of every year. They are always putting their safety on the line, and we don't ever want to forget that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next resolution is recognizing Seminole County Public School Dividends Program in their 50th anniversary.
So I'm going to indulge, if you'll indulge me for a minute, Chairman. I started this a very long time ago with Chairman Pennock at the time, and this was intended to be a celebration with Dee Dee in tow, and I'm going to continue with the celebration with Dee Dee in tow because I believe she's here with us today. We couldn't have asked for a better mentor, and to her family, I'm just going to say thank you for sharing her. And I'm also going to say, we know why you shared her, because she would have worn you out if you hadn't. So
100%.
it's with that in mind and the fact that I'm going to do this with no tears, because her position in life was things need to be done. What are you going to do about it? And that's what we're here to do today. She is a very large part of the reason why I'm sitting in this seat. And so I blame her every night, just so you know. So with that, I move the following resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Seminole County Public Schools Dividends 50th anniversary. Whereas Dividends is a volunteer program for Seminole County Public Schools, and whereas this volunteer program was created and sustained through the sheer persistence, patience, and determinations by Dee Dee Schaffner and approved by the Seminole County Public School Board on July 25th, 1973. And whereas on July 31st, 1973, the first schools to host and reap the benefits of dividend volunteers were Altamont Elementary, Southside Elementary, and Rosenwald. And whereas the program was nurtured and developed by Dee Dee, the school board, SCPS staff, and committed community members over the years. And whereas Dividends currently has 30,000 registered volunteers who support the schools, students, and staff of Seminole County Public Schools, and whereas the program currently provides an annual average of 700,000 volunteer hours to SCPS, resulting in approximately $19 million in savings. And whereas the program has received state recognition, 4 national awards, 4 Walt Disney Community Service Awards, and whereas Dividend volunteer program examples include classroom volunteers, Connections, Mentors, Field Trip Chaperones, Healthy Hands, Growing Gardens, Living on My Own, Media Support, Office Support, RAP, Take Stock in Children, and Volunteer Coach. And whereas the Seminole County Extension, IFAS, University of Florida, supports Living on My Own, Healthy Hands, and Growing Gardens as part of a memorandum of understanding with the Dividends Program. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our congratulations to Seminole County Public Schools Dividend Program for their 50 years of volunteerism in Seminole County Public Schools, adopted this 23rd day of May 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
And I do know that we have, well, I think we have some of the original crew here. We also have Deborah and Leslie, and I'm going to call you Schaffner today because that seems appropriate. We have Chairman Christine Kraus, Member Amy Pennick, and Member Abby Sanchez. And Leslie and Deborah, if you'd like to say a word, you are more than welcome to come up. Or you can just say, we can't.
I think let the dividends group have their moment. We appreciate very much the recognition for our mom, and please let her legacy inspire us all. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. We love you and we love her. Thank you, Missa. Thank you for coming up.
I don't think I had a choice. Good morning. I'm Missa Mills. I manage community involvement.
They've
for the
carried
school
her
district.
legacy well, just so you know.
Thank
They
you.
didn't
I
have a
appreciate
choice when you
that.
nominated her.
Thank you. On behalf of the district, we thank you guys so much. We appreciate the partnership and the understanding of the importance of community to support our dividends program. Our schools are successful because of the foundation that they're built on, and that foundation is built on faith-based community partners, business partners, and our volunteers. So on behalf of the district, thank you so much for this recognition. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask School Board Member Amy Pennock to accept this next resolution. She is the school board member that is in the district of Lake Mary High School, and this is for the Lake Mary High School boys lacrosse team. Whereas on May 6, 2023, the Lake Mary Rams boys lacrosse team forever forged its name in the record books by winning the FHSAA state championship in Naples, Florida. And whereas the Rams finished with an undefeated season, 24-0, against some of the best teams in the state. And whereas the Rams lacrosse team is only the second sports team in the history of Lake Mary High School to have a perfect season. And whereas the Rams lacrosse team is currently ranked number 3 in the nation, according to Max Preps. And whereas Coach Garrick Robinson has been leading the Rams lacrosse team for nearly 12 years and said the team excelled throughout the season and their talent, teamwork, and perseverance brought home the big win. And whereas Seminole County is proud to recognize the outstanding performance and dedication by the athletes and the coaching staff of the Lake Mary Rams boys lacrosse team. Now therefore be it resolved that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners wishes to commend the Lake Mary Rams boys lacrosse team for their achievement on behalf of the residents of Seminole County. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the official minutes by the Clerk of the Circuit Court in and for County of Seminole, adopted this 23rd day of May 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Amy is also a Lake Mary mom.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. Lake Mary just graduated yesterday, so unfortunately, I pass along their regrets for not being here. They are celebrating. On behalf of Dr. Reynolds and Coach Robinson and all of the team, we appreciate the recognition. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
Go Rams.
Next resolution is recognizing the 2023 Seminole Cultural Arts Council Artist of the Year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is going to be fun, and you'll know because me trying to pronounce these names is going to be an interesting proposition. I would like to say, though, before, and my family asked me to say this. I didn't want to do it but until I got the thing. But Dee Dee Schaffner was one of my mother's best friends. And the last trip that Dee Dee had with what they call the GGs. Is that what it's called, Donna? Because Donna is one of them, was up in North Carolina at Dee Dee's home and up there. And my mother and you and others went up there, and I know it was a tragic loss to all of us. I remember being way back in the early 80s a member of the board of the dividends when I was still a city commissioner in Altamont Springs. So it brings back a lot of memories, and I think that she was a county treasure that will never be forgotten. So thank you very much. And also, when we're going Go Rams, I want to say Go Patriots. I think the Lake Brantley women's softball team is up for the state championships soon, and go Patriots. Wish them the very best.
When they win, we'll do a resolution.
Yes, we will, and they will win. Okay. This is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners recognizing Saul Vinius Jankalkas, Dr., from now on being known in this resolution as Dr. J, and also Irma Kervilian. And after that, her name will now be Irma K. So, and I move recognizing Dr. J and Irma K as Artists of the Year in Seminole County. Whereas Seminole County Board of County Commissioners and the Seminole Cultural Arts Council acknowledges the important role of arts and what they play in the quality of life of the residents of Seminole County and support the Artist of the Year program. And whereas the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners wishes to acknowledge the contributions of individual cultural artists, performers, visual artists, historians, and authors as Artists of the Year, who have contributed to the enrichment of Seminole County and who are active in the community for the advancement of the arts. And whereas Seminole County Board of County Commissioners this year breaks with tradition to honor two collaborating local artists, Dr. J, glass art and glass enamels, and Irma K, internationally recognized fall finisher, muralist, and restorer of fine furniture. And whereas Longwood-based board-certified plastic surgeon Dr. J and Irma K are both Lithuanian descent, both premier artists in their own right, pooled their considerable talents and dedicated their time to the Wayne Dench Performing Arts Center at the historic Ritz Theater in downtown Sanford, transforming the interior of that theater with Art Deco-inspired walls hung with Dr. J original art glass Sakonis. And whereas Dr. J, a native of Detroit with a love of poetry, Lithuanian folklore, and religion, who has glass creations in private, corporate, and museum collections, is also the head of research and development at Unique Glass Colors, LLC in Castleberry, developing new products and creating solutions to problems in glass enamels, and has served on the Seminole County Arts Council Board for more than 10 years. And whereas Irma K, a native of Vilnius Academy of Arts in Lithuania, is passionate about painting on canvas, mural art, and classic music, with exhibitions in the U.S. and Europe, often collaborates on residential and commercial projects with interior and large-scale event designers, and donates her time and talents to the Ronald McDonald Charities. Now therefore, be it resolved that Seminole County Board of County Commissioners wishes to commend Dr. J and Irma K for their efforts to promote the arts throughout Seminole County and Central Florida. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the official minutes of the clerk of the circuit court in and for the county of Seminole, and presented to Dr. J and Irma K with the best wishes on their joint selection as 2023 Artists of the Year.
Second.
So motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Chairman, Commissioners, Anthony Aramendia. I'm the president of the Seminole Cultural Arts Council. I want to acknowledge our board members and our executive director, Donna Bundy. We introduced to you Dr. Jane and Irma Kevillian, which unfortunately is not able to attend today because she got stuck in traffic. Other than that, Dr. Jane.
She's in the back. She's in the back.
Oh, come on up. Now it's your turn. Say a couple words. Don't be shy. They'd rather be shy. These are artists, so we really want to acknowledge all the work that they've done throughout our community. The arts and culture in Seminole County is very much appreciated. We also appreciate your partnership with our community as well. So again, Dr. J. Irma Kevillian, congratulations. Thank you.
I would like to take just a personal point of privilege and acknowledge Dr. Jankowskis. When our daughter was 5, she was doing what a lot of 5-year-olds do, and she was spinning until she could get as dizzy as she could get, and she wound up going headfirst into a coffee table and split that eyebrow open like you would not believe. And so we took her up here to the emergency room, and as a mom of a little girl, I said, well, no one is touching my daughter's face except for a plastic surgeon. And so the plastic surgeon on call was Dr. Jankowskis, and I cannot thank you enough because that eyebrow is perfect. No one would ever know that thing had been split open. She looked like a prize fighter. You did a tremendous job. So your arts go well beyond glass, and you're really great with faces, too. So thank you. We appreciate you, and congratulations to you both. Let's go ahead and do all of the photos and recognitions now, and then we'll move on to our legislative update. Okay?
And we got the proclamations down on the floor.
Yeah, the proclamations are right here on the corner. We'll start with Mr. Hyde. I'll get the teams.
You can hope.
Everyone take one step to your right, please. Thank you. You did center as possible. On my count, 3, 2, 1. One more. Yeah, one more.
We're good? All right.
He's up here smiling.
That's unusual.
Can you stay up for the Memorial Day? All right. So just right there. Yep. And we did have Kathy as a representative of the Veterans Office. That's okay. That's okay.
Somebody get him in.
That guy right there. Let's go. That guy right there. Where you want to stand? Wherever you want to.
If you're a veteran in the room, please come down.
All right, everybody all set?
Money in the boat.
But just for you.
Excuse me, can we wait there's one veteran? County manager? Can you come down? He is a Navy man.
All right, everybody all set? All right, on my count is 3, 2, 1. One more, and 3, 2, 1. Perfect, thank you guys.
As long as we can see the camera.
On my count, in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, no, ladies, you're in front. Green team, you got to be down there. Original green team down front. Right next to you.
All righty, got everybody? We're all going to be looking right here. We got 2 photos. First one on my count in 3, 2, 1. All right, then one more right here.
Right behind you.
On my count in 3, 2, 1.
He names it differently.
We got 2 of them, right?
On your award and on here. Everybody all set? First one right here. On my count in 3, 2, 1. One more. I remember it.
Yes, yes. Oh, I can hear you guys anywhere.
Commissioners, we have three different presentations, and then I think I'd like to have us take a break before our fourth presentation this morning, just because I think it might be time for a little break at that point. That's okay with you?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Welcoming this morning from the Southern Group, Oscar Anderson, to give us a legislative update.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Kaylee Slattery is also going to help me do some of this presentation this morning. As you know, legislative session just wrapped up a few weeks ago, so some things haven't quite been decided by the governor yet, but we wanted to get in front of you to do a quick overview. I always like to talk about the bills and that were filed and passed, only to kind of show you, particularly this year, they passed a lot more bills than they normally do. We were very busy in Tallahassee and filed a lot less, so the percentage was much higher than has happened in the past. But overall, it was, as I said, a very busy year. There was probably more protests than I've ever seen in the Capitol building, and more money in the budget we've ever seen. So it kind of summarized the year. They solved a lot of their problems through the budget, as they do. I think Kaylee's going to run through the budget highlights real quick.
Yes, speaking of the budget, just wanted to give you guys just a quick kind of rundown of what was funded this year. We've got Everglades restoration, a lot of wastewater technology grant program funding, the wildlife corridor, which Oscar can talk about. It was very, very well funded this year. Plenty of Florida Forever recurring funds, $100 million this year. And then, if you want to go to the next one. Where's your clicker? And then we had a pretty big increase in sale and ship funding, and then CHIRP as well. We've got some other ones. Visit Florida was funded at $80 million. Originally it was 0, and then they kind of went back and forth, and it ended at 80. Got the Job Growth Grant Fund and a lot of local transportation initiatives that were funded this year. And the governor has not signed the budget or really been addressing anything yet, so we are on the lookout for that. And then we've got some Seminole County budget wins, just like what Tricia presented at the kind of introductory meeting in January. The septic to sewer Wekiva project, the Midway drainage, and the Lake Jessup watershed project were all given $1 million. Again, we're going to wait for the governor to get to his veto period, and we will keep an eye on that and let you guys know.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, as Kaylee indicated, the governor hasn't gotten the budget yet. His OPB director was given a presentation, I think, last week and made a comment that he felt like, as has been true in the past, most of the water quality and quantity projects have survived the veto pin, so we're optimistic about those appropriations specifically because of that. Of course, optimism always gets me in trouble. So key local government issues that I just wanted to touch on, we'll just do some highlights. One related to land use and development regulations, House Bill 439. 1604 is the one that actually passed. It did a few things, extended the planning period, limited what you can do as publicly initiated amendments. It was controversial primarily because they put the Disney development order language in, and there was a paragraph in there about trying to undo the Walt Disney World development order. So that became a kind of a bigger bill than it probably would have been otherwise. The land and water management bill, this one did not pass, but I wanted to put it in there to flag one issue that did pass. So in the budget, there was $250,000 for a study at IFAS about fertilizers, the fertilizer ordinances and best practices. And then we saw literally right the day before the budget came out, a provision that came in there that put a moratorium on all fertilizer ordinance changes, new or amendments for the next year while that study is going on. They sort of go hand in hand, but nobody was expecting the moratorium. That kind of came out of the blue at the very end. So because it's in the same ballpark, I wanted to flag that. School board tournaments I put up here only because it started as county commission tournaments and school board tournaments in the Senate. Narrowed down to just school board tournaments at the end. Took the county commission piece off. So of note, Florida retirement system. I don't know if you guys heard the beginning. Some of the earlier versions of this. We're going to have a significant fiscal impact to the county, a big number. I still don't know what the final number is. I ask Bob McKee at the counties all the time, and he goes into this very complicated formula and process, and I always like, just tell me the numbers, Bob. But it's much better. The big $3 billion statewide number got taken out of the final formula, so we feel like it shouldn't be nearly as big an impact as it was. And then finally, local government comprehensive plans, 540. This is the one that changes the prevailing party fees, attorney's fees, from what it's been in the past. A lot of the environmental groups feel like it's going to sort of slow down their ability to challenge comprehensive plan changes. So it was pretty controversial during session. Again, still waiting on it to get to the governor. I got a lot of text here, but I know the affordable housing bill was a big deal, and I know there's going to be a lot of conversation around here about it. So I wanted to kind of do the highlights, and I put all this up here really just to show you how comprehensive it was. It's a very big bill. The Senate President's office worked on it for about a year, trying to get all the bits and pieces. Of note, probably, and the things related to Florida housing specifically, there's a new tax donation program. So instead of paying your corporate income tax to the Department of Revenue, you can actually write it into the SALE program. So up to $100 million there, which is kind of a cool thing, trying to generate more money. If you remember, SALE is the production part of it, builds new units. SHIP kind of does more rehab and down payment assistance. SHIP is what the county controls. SALE is what Florida Housing controls. It did some things, added some board members. It also added another $100 million for the Hometown Heroes program, which remember last year was for like essential services personnel. They actually expanded it to anybody who's worked for a period of time for a Florida-based employer. So basically, if you're from here and you work here, you can get credit, you can get access to that down payment assistance program. Unlike SHIP, it's run out of Tallahassee, so there'll be kind of both avenues for that. Other state level things of note, the Job Growth Grant Fund, which Kaylee touched on at $75 million, they expanded the eligible projects to include infrastructure for workforce and affordable housing, which wasn't really an eligible use of the Job Growth Grant Fund before. Let's go to the tax stuff at the bottom first. There were 3 new ad valorem tax issues that were included in this. One basically gave you a tax if you had a 99-year lease to a nonprofit. Essentially, it's a tax break anyway. The one at the bottom says that you guys can, by your own option, extend a property tax break to affordable housing projects, but it's up to your option. And then the middle one was the new kind of creative one. It's called the Missing Middle Program, and essentially what it does is if you're a market rate developer and you're willing to reduce 10% below that market rate or what is the area median income, then you can get a property tax break for those individual units. You have to go through a little certification program. We don't know if it's going to work, if it will work. It's never been tried anywhere, so it'll be interesting to see how that gets implemented. For you all specifically, the stuff at the top is a big deal. There were some preemptions in there, specifically related to comp plan and zoning approvals. Kind of took it out of your hands for workforce and affordable housing projects and allowed the developers to get kind of density and height and intensity around from the surrounding areas. I've already had some conversations with staff. It's going to be a lot. I would characterize it this way. There are some communities, particularly where the Senate President's from in that part of the state, that were very aggressive against affordable housing. And the language that was always said to me, and not from her, but from people around her, were always like, we're just trying to change the playing field and put the local governments more on defense on these things instead of on offense, sort of the way it was characterized. There's a lot of challenges with it. I know there are cities and urban cities that have basically no height restrictions, so they can allow 100-story affordable housing projects to show up. I can't imagine. So we fully anticipate there to be some tweaks and guardrails and things that happen to that next session, so we'll stay on touch of that. We'll stay on top of that as it goes along and with the staff on the challenges of implementation for sure. The tax bill. Kaylee, you want to talk about the tax package?
Madam Chair, real quick, if I may. Just a note for those that may be tuning in watching on their computer, the agenda online does not match this presentation.
Oh, it does not. I'm sorry. My apologies. I changed. That's my fault. I made a few changes. in the shower last night, so I need to add a couple things, so I apologize
Just
for
don't
that.
want people to be
Yeah. That's
running around trying to figure out where they're at on their.
definitely my fault. I should have said that at the beginning. I apologize.
Okay, taxes. So every year they have a tax package, the legislature passes a tax package. This year they did some interesting things. Just like always, there's 6 sales tax holidays. They are still keeping the Energy Star certified appliances, that 1-year sales tax exemption. That's not new at all. And then kind of a new part is the tourist development tax referendum, and the increases in the population caps, which I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about that, and we can definitely answer more questions if there are any. And then also the package freezes the local communication service tax rates, and then also appropriates $35 million to reimburse local governments for property tax funds from Hurricane Ian or Nicole if there was damage and the county paid for it. These are just some graphics on the Freedom Summer Sales Tax holidays. Oscar?
Sure. Other legislative issues of note that didn't pass. Vacation rentals, perennial conversation up there. Felt like everybody hated the bill about 2/3 of the way through session, so maybe it was okay. If everybody doesn't like it, maybe it's hit a chord there. It's an issue for the Senate President. They sent over what they thought was the right package to solve that problem, give the balance between the local and the state. The House put an amendment on it, and the Senate basically did as they do at the end, refused to concur, and so it died in the process. Sovereign immunity, which we've talked about in the past. Issue for Senator Hudson was trying to increase that per incident thing. That did not pass. And then some issues on residential building permits, the old shot clock issue where you got to act within so many days. We fully expect all of these will be back again next year. They're becoming regular conversations in Tallahassee. As I indicated, they did a lot this year. So you can see this is a list of all the things they tackled: tort reform, for PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, obviously all the ESG stuff, constitutional carry, abortion rights. It was across the board. Seemed like every week they were taking on another really controversial, large topic that took up a lot of time, frankly. As I indicated, some of these issues will be started, and we know we'll have conversations like on the housing bill. Committee week starts in September. They're going to get right back at it. We're going into the early session, so it'll start right after the first of the year and go through March. I think that's it. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, so we're happy to take them.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. Questions? Commissioner Herr.
Can you go back to the tax slide, please?
Figured out how to run this thing.
That
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
I think you skipped right over the first bullet point,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, she did. That's
because we wouldn't want to talk about that.
This was a priority a couple years ago. They started the process of reducing the commercial rent tax. We're one of the few states, I think, that even has it anymore. And so from a competitive, they've been slowly chipping away at it. I think they took another % off of it, essentially, and I think by next year, they go down to 2%. And then within a couple years later, they get to basically to 0. They've been slowly fading that out over time.
So that's a 20% reduction.
Yeah, it's a big reduction. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I have one. As the board knows, we've been working diligently on the Yarborough property with the Florida Forever acquisition. And I want to thank Oscar and Kaylee for helping us through that process. One of the things that we have been doing is actually pushing it a little bit with the state and asking if we could start the appraisal process. And I believe Oscar has got an answer for us, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you've been working on that. We've been talking last week on this, and he said he would have an answer for us today.
Yeah, that's fine. I talked to the Deputy Secretary up at DEP, who's over all the state lands issues, and talked specifically about the county initiating the process, the appraisal process, and sort of what that would look like. There's no concern at all from the county sort of initiating the process. There's a list of state-approved appraisers. I was trying to bring it with me, but I don't have it with me. But essentially, what I would do if I was you is use one of those state-approved appraisers off the list As long as it moves fast enough, they won't even have to redo it because the state-approved appraisers know their criteria, so it's in kind of they just sort of pick up that appraisal and run with it. They might have to do a second one as you get further in the process. But from the county's initiation perspective and appraisal perspective, I think you're really in good shape from the state's.
And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to the attention to the board. As you know, we're putting a lot of pressure on this process for the acquisition of the Yarborough property, and so we just wanted to keep pushing and taking that next step. If the board is good with that, as long as we use one of the state appraisers, we can get this process moving.
Madam Chair, will you be bringing that up under your county manager report?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure there will be additional questions.
Yes.
Yep, all right. Anything else for our lobbying team?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Well
so
done.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner
I
Constantine. Well, I was a little surprised too, but.
I know, yeah, I was too, yeah.
No, I just, Oscar, because of the timing and because a lot of the issues that were very difficult for local governments got lost in the mix, as they usually do at the very end. But we're talking about 7 committee weeks, and we're talking about early session. I know that we're going to have to really start working early on this. I know the Florida Association of Counties is doing that in setting some strategies on some of the more onerous issues that have come up. You said a lot of them that failed, but just like vacation rentals and other things, those things were like at the very, very end. It looked like they were going to pass, and then they came through. So whether it be that, sovereign immunity, and all those things, we're not going to have too much of a rest period when it comes to the legislature this year. And I do appreciate the work, and I know that you are working closely with us. The whole team is working closely with us at the Association of Counties and with our county. But I just, we need to come up with more, the positive game plan, as opposed to always playing, and we'll have to play defense 95% of the time because we don't know what's going to come up, but it would be nice to have some plans of action on some of these more difficult things, and I know that Davin and the staff at Florida Association of Counties are doing that, and I'd like you to just stay in touch with them as we go through that process.
Will do,
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
Anything else? Thank you. Appreciate it so much. Our next update is from Scott McIntyre from Hilltop. Good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Hope you guys are all doing well.
Yes, good to see you.
Oh.
It's always good to see our brethren from Texas.
See you guys too.
So that little clicker is sort of like the thermostat. We just give it to you to make you feel better.
Totally.
It's like pushing the light when you're going to cross the street again and again and again, or the elevator button. I get it. Okay, so I did move the major economic themes with the debt ceiling to the front because we've got Janet Yellen, as you guys know, who was the Treasury Secretary, sort of sounded the alarm and created some urgency when she said that June 1st was going to be the date that we were going to run out of money. And obviously that is a week from Thursday, so there is a lot of urgency, and McCarthy is meeting with Biden hopefully today. There is some optimism today. There may not be optimism tomorrow. There was a meeting on Friday that the GOP had walked out of, but then they came back later that day. Considering how potentially, I don't even know if catastrophic is the word, I really don't. Nobody knows what's going to happen or what could happen because it's never happened before. But the date is getting closer. In the event that we actually get to June 1st and there isn't a resolution, there is a really actually good possibility we keep things going for another 2 weeks when corporate taxes come in, and then that will give us another month. But again, it's sort of kicking the can down the road. And the only thing I really want to mention that we do know for certain is that when there is a debt ceiling resolution and when there is a new debt ceiling, there will be a lot of Treasury bills that are issued all at once to replenish the liquidity that's been eaten away. So we will factor that into the discussions about how we invest going forward. Inflation rate is falling, but it's still well above target. The core CPI, which is really what the Fed looks at, is still at a 5.5% year-over-year rate. That's way too high. It's 17 months above 5%, which is pretty unprecedented. So their work is not done. They meet on the 14th of June. The question is whether they continue to raise rates, pause, or cut. They won't cut. They're unlikely to raise rates. The pause is probably what happens here, just to allow the 500 basis points worth of tightening that's happened since last March to take effect. Labor market is resilient, too resilient. Banking system still feels kind of fragile right now. Everything feels a little bit fragile. Is there a recession on the horizon? I will tell you that it didn't turn out to be the first quarter. It wasn't the fourth quarter last year. It doesn't look like it's going to be the second quarter this year, so who knows? Obviously, the Fed would like to orchestrate some slowdown in demand, but that is not happening yet. This is a very resilient economy, for better or for worse. And then kind of at the bottom, I've left that here because I do feel like that China-Taiwan threat is sort of lingering out there. The market really hasn't factored it in yet, but that is certainly something the market should probably at some point think about, but there's no room to think about it. Inflation, two things I want to point out. That green line is overall headline year-over-year inflation. It's down to it's actually been moving down rapidly because energy prices have moved down rapidly and food prices have sort of stabilized. But they're running into a block, which is those light blue bars, and that is service sector costs, and they're not coming down very fast at all, so we may sort of be where we're going to be. Also, that red line is core CPI, which does not include energy prices or food prices. And again, that's at 5.5%, and that's too high. So again, Fed not done. Very briefly, employment. What I want to point out is on the line on the right-hand side there, that's the unemployment rate, both headline and U6, but headline is down to the lowest since 1969. That's actually a new low. It's 3.39%. So you can't really say that the economy is limping its way toward a recession. We're at the lowest unemployment rate that we've had since 1969. That's something, I'm not sure how that resolves itself, frankly. And of course, that feeds into service sector inflation. Economic growth, the only thing I want to point out here, and I know this is a little bit, there's a lot of numbers here, a lot of lines. The red line is what we think of as GDP, and GDP has come down from 3.7 to 2.6 to 1.1% as of the first quarter. So clearly that looks like it's slowing down. The only thing I want to caution you on is that blue bar is consumer spending, and that makes up most of our GDP from period to period. That was actually very, very strong in the first quarter. It added 2.5 percentage points to that 1.1. The pull down on that was inventory accumulations, which were negative, and they actually subtracted 2.3%. Inventories sort of wax and wane from quarter to quarter, so when you have a big quarter where inventories don't get built up, you can expect that inventories are going to build up in subsequent quarters. So we don't think second quarter growth is going to be negative either. We think second quarter growth could be more robust than the Fed would like to see. Again, this is reason why you wouldn't expect the Fed to start cutting rates this year, not necessarily indicating they're going to raise rates anymore. So bringing us to investment choices, and on the U.S. Treasuries over to the left-hand side, those two cross-through columns are our last two meetings where the yields were. Didn't actually buy any securities either of the last two meetings for several reasons, but now yields are higher. We expect they're going to continue to creep up. What we'd like to do is now, when we get to the point where we can take advantage of it, we like to throw some yields out a little bit longer. The bank yields have moved up with the Fed. This is probably as high as they're going to go. There's two local banks that the majority of the bank funds are at. One of them is paying 5.25%. One of them is paying 5 1/8%. So that's a nice, that accomplishes a couple of things. You do keep money here locally. That money can be lent out, and the yield is high right now. The banks are willing to pay essentially what the Fed is paying. Pool yields, of course, has moved up as well. I think we're probably very nearing a peak here. So upcoming maturities. Fortunately, there are a lot coming up, not only in the majority of this month, lots in June, some in July, some in August. The timing is good on that. The next week, you've got 2 maturities, and I've spoke with the clerk's office, and what we'd like to do is to allow both of those to mature and to build up liquidity. And then the 45 that comes due in the early part of June, we will reinvest. And what we're looking at here is 2 blocks of government securities, agency securities, going out to roughly June 2025, September 2025, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 460, maybe 465 if we're lucky. Puts it way out into 2025, and we'll be glad that those yields are there, I believe, when the time comes. And then we'll roll over part of the Florida Palm term. I'm not really sure what that rate's going to be, but I expect it probably will be higher than 5.10. And in all, the last 3 that are listed as upcoming maturities we'll address at the next meeting, because we'll have a lot more information then. So all we're going to focus on is that 45. First part here in May goes to liquidity. What's happening in early June, we'll reinvest, take some of it out of Palm, move it out a little bit. So I know that's a lot to absorb. Hopefully I was clear enough that it made sense.
Madam Chairman, motion to implement the recommendations presented by the financial advisor on the report submitted today, and recommend the clerk implement said board recommendations.
Second.
There's a motion by Delari, second by Zembauer. Any questions? Commissioner Herr?
I do have a question, not directly related to the motion, but on slide 3, non-farm payroll total change in thousands. That includes both the inflation and the added jobs?
So that non-farm payroll increase is, there's a lot of numbers that feed into that. That basically is the net company payroll increase, seasonally adjusted for the month. So you take what you can out of that.
It's deceiving.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, 21 million jobs in, 20,850,000 out, seasonal adjustment factor on top of that. There are other numbers that we look at. Sometimes ADP is actually a more pure number because it actually is literally what people report on their payrolls. But this is what the market reacts to. So, you're right, it is wonky.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you all.
Safe
you.
travels
Happy
back
Memorial
to
Day.
Texas.
Yes, same to you.
Scott, is that a new investment term, wonky? Just
I was hoping we could still say wonky.
Yeah.
The minute I said it, I thought,
You're
do I
good.
really know what that means?
You're
But-
good here.
Okay.
I said Jack Diddley last week, so you're good.
I just thought that was funny.
All right. Our next presentation is from Michelle Micah. She's the Executive Director of the Central Florida Expressway Authority. Oh, and you have someone with you as well. I'll let you introduce Glenn.
I do. I actually have several team members
Okay.
here that I want to introduce. But let me first say thank you so much for having us. We're going to be presenting an update to you today on the Orlando Sanford International Airport connector to 417. This, as you are aware, came to us by your request. You asked us to look at this project once again, and we're now coming to close to the end of the project, and so we want to give you an update of where we are. Still, there's a little bit more work to do, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in a second, what the next steps are. I do want to introduce some of our team members that are here with us. Glenn Pressamon is our Chief of Infrastructure, so he oversees all of engineering and construction for us. I have Dana Chester, who is our Director of Engineering, is with us today. Then we have Sunsaray Gates is our project manager from VHB that will be doing the actual presentation and going into real detail about where we are. And then finally, I have Shamir here from QCA, who does our public information, which is a very important process, and they work a lot with the public in sharing the information and getting feedback, and that's very important to CFX. I do want to share with you that just kind of where we've been and where we're going. First, we have met with the City of Sanford, and we did a presentation with them a couple of weeks ago. After this presentation today, we'll be meeting with the Sanford Airport and sharing with them what we're sharing with you. An important date to remember is June 20th. We're going to be having our public meeting. This is a concept, feasibility, and mobility study, so this is a very high-level study. After we have our public meeting, we anticipate going to our board in August for acceptance of the study, and one of the outcomes that could come from that meeting is that we decide, or the board gives us direction to move to a project development and environmental study. And that is an important part of the process, because today what Cynthia is going to share with you is going to be multiple alternatives. Through the PD&E process is where we actually narrow down and start really honing in on what a preferred potential alternative would be. And then, there's design construction that comes far after all of those exercises and study processes. So we're excited to be able to share this information with you today per your request of us doing the study and answer any questions that you may have. I will lend probably to the technical team to do most of the talking from here forth, but available to answer whatever you have afterwards. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Sunsaray Gates, Consultant Project Manager with VHB for the study. Within CFX's project development process shown here, as Michelle mentioned, the project is currently in the feasibility study phase. At the conclusion of the feasibility study, after public input is received on the preliminary concepts and based on CFX board approval, the next phase would be the project development and environment, or PD&E phase. Both the feasibility study and the PD&E study phases consider the environmental effects during the alternatives development process to provide an opportunity for input in the early stages of development. After PD&E is the design phase. Prior to this CF&M study, a new expressway connection from State Road 417 to the Orlando International Airport has been studied for almost 20 years. An earlier study, completed in 2007, did indicate that there was a need to improve access to the airport. However, at that time, it was determined that the project was not financially feasible. Rapid area growth, planned development, and increasing congestion resulted in the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners requesting that CFX expedite this study. The CF&M study was initiated last year in August of 2022. The objective of this study is to evaluate the feasibility of each mobility option based on engineering, traffic, economic, and environmental evaluations, and determine if the project is feasible. A potential direct connection from State Road 417 to the airport is expected to enhance regional connectivity by improving access to the airport, increasing mobility options, and providing enhanced system linkage between these strategic intermodal system facilities. Additionally, the connector is expected to provide needed capacity, decrease congestion, improve traffic operations, reduce travel time, and improve safety, particularly along East Lake Mary Boulevard within the study area. This feasibility study includes the evaluation of the social, cultural, natural, and physical environment, right-of-way considerations, and construction cost estimates. Any potential effects to environmental resources will be avoided or minimized to the extent feasible. This study also documents the potential project benefits, such as the improved mobility and economic benefits. The project is located within both the Seminole County and the City of Sanford jurisdictions and consists of a potential expressway connection from State Road 417 in the vicinity of the Seminole Toll Plaza northeastward to East Lake Mary Boulevard at or near the entrance to the airport at Red Cleveland Boulevard. The study area outlined in red includes the Seminole Toll Plaza, which is owned and operated by Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. Traffic studies do show the potential connector is anticipated to reduce the congestion and improve traffic operations at the existing interchange and along East Lake Mary Boulevard by separating airport and regional traffic to improve regional connectivity. The existing traffic operations analysis indicates that during peak periods, there are existing extended delays and queues along State Road 417 and County Road 427, Ronald Reagan Boulevard, and at that interchange at East Lake Mary Boulevard. Significant socioeconomic growth is anticipated due to the planned development, airport growth, and regional growth. According to the 2021 Master Plan, Airport Master Plan update, passenger enplanements are expected to increase 91% by 2037. Seminole County's population is anticipated to grow approximately 21% by 2050. In addition, there is extensive planned development south of the airport. There are 10 residential and commercial or industrial planned developments that account for 55% of the vacant lands in the study area. Future year traffic on East Lake Mary Boulevard, west of Red Cleveland Boulevard, is anticipated to increase by nearly 54% by 2050. Based on these 2050 future traffic volumes, a potential connector could divert as much as 17,000 vehicles that originate to and from the south on State Road 417 to a new facility, which would thereby reduce congestion at the existing interchange and on East Lake Mary Boulevard near the airport to improve operations. The project is also anticipated to decrease traffic at the Airport Boulevard interchange by approximately 3,000 vehicles. Most of the study area is comprised of residential developments, shown in yellow, and undeveloped land uses, shown in gray. Other prominent land uses in the study area include agricultural properties and managed conservation lands. The 10 planned developments shown here in cross-hatching are located within the City of Sanford's jurisdiction. The largest of these developments is the Concord single-family residential development, which is under construction and located south of East Lake Mary Boulevard and west of Kensington Reserve. The Concord development is anticipated to provide approximately 421 developments. There are also several planned commercial developments along Red Cleveland Boulevard, including 2 planned developments, SFB Crossing and Hampton Inn, that are not yet permitted. The study team has conducted several coordination meetings with stakeholders to minimize and avoid impacts to these planned developments. The natural environment resources include wetlands, floodplains, wildlife species, and habitats, as well as water quality were all considered as part of the study. The non-forested wetlands, shown here in light green, are present throughout the study area. The study area also contains 117 acres of St. John's River Water Management District conservation lands, shown in dark green, with contiguous locations adjacent to Lake Jessup. The study area contains 6 active or inactive eagle's nests. The project occurs within the jurisdiction of the St. John's River Water Management District and is located within the Lake Jessup Basin. The Lake Jessup Basin does have a basin management action plan to improve water quality. This study will evaluate stormwater management and floodplain compensation needs to comply with all water quality and quantity criteria required by governing agencies. Future pond siting needs would be determined in a PD&E study if a feasible project is identified as a result of this study. There are multiple properties in the area that could provide regional mitigation opportunities. Undeveloped parcels could be used to help connect to the existing wildlife areas to better support conservation and habitat preservation. If the project is determined feasible, we would continue to coordinate with the St. Johns River Water Management District and agencies to identify regional mitigation opportunities for mitigation of impacts. Based on the initial traffic demand analysis, a 2-lane typical section is anticipated to provide adequate capacity through the year 2050 to accommodate the future traffic. However, adequate right-of-way for a potential future expansion of 1 lane in each direction, resulting in a 4-lane facility, was assumed. The typical section shown here minimizes right-of-way needs, reduces impacts and costs, and provides flexibility for the future expansion. The typical section would be developed with a design speed of 45 miles per hour, and it would be elevated over the existing local roadways to maintain existing access. Other engineering considerations include the use of all electronic tolling standards for the potential connector, along with any potential multimodal opportunities the study identifies. The proposed interchange at East Lake Mary Boulevard would allow for full access to East Lake Mary Boulevard and Red Cleveland Boulevard and maintain existing access at the existing intersection. Drivers would be able to access the southbound airport connector from Red Cleveland Boulevard at the airport or at East Lake Mary Boulevard. Existing sidewalks and pedestrian facilities along both East Lake Mary Boulevard and Red Cleveland Boulevard would be maintained. Multiple alignments were considered during this initial stage of alignment development, and we evaluated the alignments based on their ability to meet the purpose and need for the project, improve traffic operations, and minimize impacts to natural and social resources. These alignments have been refined based on stakeholder input, traffic demand, design criteria, and the ability to minimize environmental impacts. The no-action alternative will continue to be evaluated throughout this study. This slide presents a summary of the range of potential impacts associated with the alignments presented today. The potential effects are based on the alignment and the typical section shown and do include the interchange connections to State Road 417 and East Lake Mary Boulevard at the airport. The proposed connector would serve up to 24,800 vehicles per day. A range of 53 to 71 acres of right-of-way impacts are anticipated. The alignments presented avoid public lands, including the Lake Jessup Wilderness area, and minimize impacts to wetlands, floodplains, species, and conservation easements to the extent feasible. The total project costs are under evaluation and are anticipated to be between $144 to $161 million. Public involvement and stakeholder coordination are integral parts of this study, and we've had multiple opportunities for participation, including meetings with CFX's Project Advisory Group, Environmental Advisory Group, and CFX's Standing Environmental Stewardship Committee. Various agency coordination meetings and stakeholder meetings have occurred throughout the study. The Project Advisory Group, the Environmental Advisory Group, and CFX's Standing Environmental Stewardship Committee are comprised of representatives from state, regional, and local environmental and government agencies and organizations, well-known advocacy and community groups, and other key stakeholders. The study does include careful consideration of this regional and local agency input and collaboration, and some of the key input we received throughout the study is summarized on this slide. Coordination with the agencies and stakeholders will continue throughout the study. Upcoming opportunities for public involvement include the public meeting that is scheduled for June 20th, 2023, to receive input on the alignments and the study evaluations. This public meeting will be held both in person and virtually, and notifications are being distributed this week. In addition, people or persons that want to provide input on the study can always visit the study website shown here or by contacting Shamir Wiles, the public involvement coordinator for the project. The overall study schedule is shown here. The study is anticipated to be completed in summer 2023 after public input is received at the public meeting and the economic feasibility of the project is evaluated further. At the public meeting, we will present these alignments, the interchange concepts, and study evaluations. Once the feasibility of the project is determined, again, the study results will be presented to the CFX board for approval and the potential need for a future project development and environment study. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present today, and we are happy to take any comments or questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Sembauer?
Thank you. First, I want to thank CFX for embarking upon this adventure on behalf of the County Commission and the citizens and taxpayers, as well as our business community. This is a huge economic development issue that we're going to see in the Sanford area, so we sincerely appreciate that. One thing that I want to make sure that is on you all's radar, and I'm sure this will more likely not come up at the meeting at SFB, is unknown to a lot of folks is Seminole County has the largest foreign free trade zone in the state of Florida. It is the only foreign free trade zone that actually has a rail hub that connects to all major ports in the state of Florida. And with the global economy beginning to unfold like we see it across the planet, there's going to be more and more desire for these foreign free trade zones. So I want to make sure that is on y'all's radar for consideration of what this may mean for the future. So again, thank you all very much, and I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Hurd?
I'd just like to also point out, I appreciate the presentation. You guys always do excellent work. I'd like to point out the value to the folks that live and work in that area to removing cars from the surface roads. The congestion is already bad. The area is not built out yet, and it is going to continue to get worse, and we can't continue to put red lights at every single corner, or it is not going to feel like Seminole County. So this is a true alternative in terms of moving people from place to place, getting those that are using the airport off of the local surface roads. It really will have a good impact to quality of life in the area.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you very much. Again, as always, good work with the CFX. I guess what needs to come out of this is that we've got a long way to go. It's going to be an expensive project. We have a lot of mitigation that we're going, whatever alignment is chosen, or if it's chosen, if it's feasible, and hopefully we can find a way to make it work, that you've got a lot of continuing planning, studies, engineering to do. There's clearly some land that has to be purchased, and the whole process is going to take a while. So as citizens out there might be concerned about when, where, why, and how, it's important that they understand that they can and have the opportunity to get involved, that mitigation will take place, and that as we continue to study this, both the County Commission as well as CFX are going to look for the best corridor, the least affected for both environmental as well as the most effective environmental, as well as from those folks that are living there, as well as what would be the most efficient and effective way to go. So it's a great start. It's been a long start. We all understand that, but the circumstances today, as others have indicated also in the past, the circumstances today are much different than the circumstances in 2007. The airport is in a different situation. It has grown substantially. The traffic in that area has increased substantially. There is, if you will, homesteads and other development going on in that area. So if we don't act now, we will have a very, get worse and worse as we continue on in the years. So it's not about just today, it's about the future and looking for what we have to do. So I look forward to working with you. I'm sure the rest of the commissioners look forward to working with you, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you, and we do echo those comments about the future study evaluations and the desire for public engagement as the project moves forward in the project development process.
Commissioner Delary?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I also want to congratulate Michelle on her new position at the Executive Director. Congratulations. You've been with the Expressway Authority how many years now?
A lot.
I've been at the agency for 15, working with them for almost 20.
Yeah. I knew it's been a while. Very well deserved.
Thank you.
You're very accomplished in that area, so it was a natural decision from the board to make that decision for you, so congratulations.
Thank you. It's a privilege to serve.
One thing I would like to ask is, once this study is completed, as you noted, we'd be going to the PD&E process. How long does that process take? Because that's where a lot of the details are going to get flushed out. So once this original study is completed, it's not really done. It's just beginning. And I think people need to realize the PD&E is where it really all gets flushed out. And can you elaborate on that, please?
It's typically about 18 months is what a PD&E takes. And I think the important thing for the community to know is there is ongoing conversations throughout all of this. So, there's not a point that we're not going to take your comment and be willing to have a conversation.
So if the public wanted to get more information or find out about it, is there a website or who would they contact?
Yeah, and I think on here, we have all of the information to get directly, and then someone will respond.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled that you brought your public relations person with you, because I think in all of this, and I love all of the details that you've presented about the process, communicating with the affected public is certainly going to be primary. I've already seen a lot of misinformation on social media, including the fact that eminent domain has already started in some cases. It's amazing what people will actually type and put out as fact when it's nowhere near factual.
Not surprising anymore.
Well, it is, to some degree it is because of who it is and the format and what have you. So we have an opportunity to get ahead in some of the communication. Can you share with us how you plan on engaging with the public? I mean, this is great so someone who wants to take the initiative to reach out, there may be a handful of people that may do that, but some folks may not even know that there is a community meeting coming up. Are we geofencing an area in order to target communication? Give me a little more detail about how you plan to communicate.
So we are communicating in many ways, one of the most effective being direct mailing this week to all the property owners that live within the red study area. So extensive study area. We've also will be posting the information on the website. It will be posted in local newspaper advertisements and in the Florida Administrative Register. We also are distributing all the information to elected and appointed officials within the study area so that we can share that information with everyone, including all the individuals that have expressed interest in the project specifically throughout the study will be contacted directly via email or mail, depending on what information they preferred.
Do you all have the ability through Nextdoor to communicate to specific neighborhoods?
We don't have, you have to be invited to Nextdoor. I tell you what we can do, and I'm a big proponent of, is we can provide your offices with written content that if you want to share that on Nextdoor, or even in a newsletter that you may have, or just correspondence with your constituents. I don't know if the county has anything that we can add to that. My background comes from the communication world, and I don't think you can do enough of it. Because I totally agree with you. I think that just from my own perspective, if you hear something from a neighbor, whether it's true or not, you think that your home or your livelihood is going to be impacted, it's a little bit scary because you don't know how to, where do you go to get that additional information? So I think definitely we want to make sure that people understand the process. I've been around long enough to know that the Wekiva Parkway took us a long time to get through. I don't think that that's the case necessarily in this situation, because there is a sense of urgency. If we're going to do something, we're going to need to do it. But there is a deliberate process in place that we expedite when we can, but we don't rush it because there's a lot of things to consider. But we will provide to Mr. Gray's office content that is reader-friendly, not engineer-esque,
Great.
as I say.
Great.
So the common folks, people in the community can come out. We hope that they come out to the public meeting, email us, or, just get in touch with us however, and give us their input and ask questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Gray?
Yeah, if I just add one thing, and I had a great meeting with Michelle a couple weeks ago and her staff, and that was one of the topics that we discussed about getting the communication out there. And so we can link it to our site. We'll get our communications team hooked up with their communications team, provide as much information, out to the public as possible.
Great.
So we're
Thank
already
you so
working on
much.
that.
Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you. We appreciate it. Great presentation.
Thank you very much.
As always.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10:45 and have the presentation that'll give our folks time to get connected with Ms. Marlock and all that good stuff. Right? Thank you. If everyone would please take their seats, we're going to call back to order the Seminole County Commission meeting. We have Renee Narlock, who is our consultant for our county attorney search, online with us today, joining us from Tallahassee. We appreciate so much you being here, Renee. And I'm just going to turn it right over to you to move forward with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. It's good to be with you again, you and the commissioners today, and I look forward to walking through where we are on the city attorney recruitment. As you know, we were asked to work with the county in finding Brian Applegate's replacement, as he is fortunately for him, retiring, and I wish him well in his endeavors. Of course, those are big shoes to fill, so we were excited to get a nod to be able to help with that. I also want to mention the fact that staff has been very helpful in this process. They always are, and that was the case this time also. They've been very just helpful to me in the process and getting us where we need to go. I just want to mention real quick about the market relative to positions of this type currently. The market in general is very tough in recruiting for a variety of positions, but certainly for a city or county attorney right now, it's proven to be a difficult market. I will say that in Seminole fashion, you have an excellent group of candidates who have applied for this job, and we did not have some of the challenges that other locations are having in trying to find city or county attorneys right now. Seminole County continues to be a place of choice, a preferred employer for professionals throughout the state of Florida. As you'll see, we have some excellent attorneys who applied for this job. Many of them were not looking for jobs, and Seminole County came open. So again, it's a real testament to Seminole County and what you are doing there as a board and the staff too. Your reputation precedes you. So that makes my job a little bit easier. And I will talk to you a little bit about our process. As you know, we've worked with you before recently, and we followed some of the similar processes throughout and will going forward because we typically have success with that. And in this case, I think the booklets or the information that you received from us highlighting some candidates that I would like to talk to you about specifically today. There's also list of candidates in the back of that book, probably the last page of the booklet, and it's everyone who applied, just so you would be aware of other people who have shown an interest in this role. And we did interview some of those other candidates too. The ones that we put forward were the ones that we felt like were the strongest candidates for what you had expressed to us that you were looking for and wanting in this particular role. The candidates that we'll talk to you about, we've done some newspaper articles, searches, Nexus searches, and things like that on them. And, you know, in different situations, there may be something that we needed to look into a little bit further, and we did. And we felt like that we got a satisfactory level of understanding about things that might be out there that would concern you or concern us. And for that, we feel like we've got good, solid candidates here. They are all in good standing with Florida Bar. Several of them are board certified. Others have, certainly been practicing in local government law for many years now. So that's it. I can across the board say that we've got a good slate of candidates here to talk about today. I do think that we have an assortment of candidates, and I like to do that. I don't like to bring you I don't like to bring you cookie cutter candidates, 5 of the same. I like to bring you an assortment, and that's diversity in experience, diversity, gender-wise, racial diversity, diversity in every sense. Some of them have had both city and county experience. There's just I think, a good mix of people in this group of candidates. Our goal today is for me to walk through some of these candidates, make sure that you have people in here that you are interested in considering further, and coming up with a handful of folks thereabouts. We don't have a magic number again. We really want to make sure that you get to look at strong candidates across the board, whatever that means, and come up with a group of candidates that we would put forward to the next step in the process, which, as I understand it, we are scheduled on June 7th to do an interview process comprised of various components for these candidates, and then the board will meet the following day with candidates and to make a decision about who you might want to move forward. I think our goal is that we would have a decision by the end of June. That could happen. I think it will happen. And then, of course, whoever the selected candidate is would give notice, and then I think the board is gone the month of July for the most part. So the timing would be really great as far as our timeline is concerned. That said, I will tell you that I group these candidates, group 1 and 2 and internal. Obviously, the internal candidates are people who currently work for Seminole County. And we have 2 internal candidates, which I'll talk with you about in just a moment. And then we have a group 1 and 2. I don't normally have a group 2 for candidates, but in this case, I felt like the 2 folks that are in group 2, I did want to put their resumes before you. Maybe you know them or know something about them or have a strong interest in them for other reasons. And again, we had some really good candidates for this. It becomes a bit challenging when you have so many people who are qualified really honing in on what best fits the county right now. So that said, we do have a group 2 there because I did want their resumes put in front of you. I'm going to spend a little more time talking about group 1 candidates when we get to that, but I'd like to start with the internal candidates. As you'll see, we have Desmond Morrell and David Shields. I know that you all know both of these candidates. I did do preliminary interviews with this candidate so I could really compare them to external candidates and sort of the apples to apples comparison here. And I had very good interviews with them. As you know, Desmond is a senior assistant county attorney, and David Shields is a deputy county attorney. And I would say they both have different styles, but both are well qualified. They meet our minimum requirements. And I will just tell you that I have a propensity to recommend internal candidates if they do meet the requirements because they're internal. And I won't spend too much time talking about that, but they have been with the organization. They are dedicated. They are commitment. They have an advantage in some ways as an internal and a disadvantage some ways as an internal. And I just feel like it's generally the right thing to do when I recommend internal candidates to come and sit down at the table. The truth is that you as a board did not hire either one of those. So this would be an opportunity for them to sit at the table with you and highlight not only what they've done at Seminole County, but maybe in prior roles, talk to you about their career goals, and just get to know them on a deeper level. So I do recommend that you put forward those 2 internal candidates if you're so inclined to do so. Group 1 candidates, they're listed as are all the candidates in alphabetical order within the groupings. So I'll go alphabetically when speaking about these candidates. I'm going to go a little quickly with the understanding that if you have some follow-up questions on any particular candidate, please feel free to ask any questions. I know you've had this information and had a chance to look over it and, probably have some ideas about the candidates already. But I would like to make sure that if you have any existing questions that we address those while we're here. Alexander Boxner, I will tell you that of the folks in Group 1, I have never worked with any of these candidates before. They're new to me. That doesn't mean anything other than I'm getting to know them as we go. And Mr. Boxner is currently the Deputy County Attorney of Sarasota County, Florida. There are 3 deputy county attorneys in Sarasota. He is one of those. He does have oversight for a good amount of attorneys, a good amount of staff there. And he is looking to come back to the Central Florida area. As you can see from his resume, he's a variety of places that he's been: Charlotte County, Marion County, even down in Miami Beach, and now in Sarasota County. I like the fact that he has city and county experience, and I like, quite frankly, the variety of places that he has worked before. I think Mr. Boxner is very solid from a legal perspective, and certainly is someone that is worth talking with as far as this role. He is looking for to be the top candidate, or the top attorney, rather, in a department, a county attorney. And he feels like he's ready for that. Now, in Seminole, just happened to come open, and I'll tell you, some of these candidates, as I mentioned, they weren't looking for jobs. Seminole County Attorney job came open, and it certainly piqued interest of a lot of candidates. The next candidate is Catherine Latour. She goes by Kate. And she is a senior assistant county attorney with Orange County government. Again, I've not worked with Kate before, but I had a very good interview with her. She seems very well-rounded, more than ready for the job. And I certainly think she could come in and step into the role of county attorney in Seminole County. She is one of 3 assistant attorneys, senior assistant attorneys in Orange County. And as you know, Orange County has a different form of government than Seminole. And she lives in Seminole County, grew up in Seminole County. Her kids go to school in Seminole County. Again, she was not looking for a job. She saw this opportunity, gave it some thought, and through several conversations, as with other candidates, several conversations with me, decided this is a great opportunity and you have to move when the time is right. So she is board certified, and I think most of you probably board certified in local government, city and county local government, and I think most of you understand what that means. There's only about 300 attorneys who are board certified in local government, city and county local government in the state of Florida. There are many other attorneys whose practice areas are local government, but there's a differentiation there. Let me see if there's anything else about Catherine I wanted to mention real quick. I think we're good for now. I'm going to go on to David Margolis. Again, I've not worked with David before. He is currently the city attorney of the city of Clearwater. He runs the shop there. He's got a pretty good sized staff. He very much enjoys his job there. And as you can see, David's background was really sort of getting exposure and building his experience and his credentials. He is board certified in local government, as I mentioned, some of the other candidates are. David went to, he's from Seminole County. He went to school at Seminole High School, and this would be a coming home for him. And he was very excited about the opportunity. I think David brings some different experience to the table, and has been very strategic in getting to the role of being a city attorney, and now would like to come home to Seminole County. Our next candidate is Diego Rodriguez. He goes by Woody. Some of you folks may know him. As you can see, he is currently the General Counsel for Central Florida Expressway Authority in Orlando. And again, he was one of our candidates that really thought long and hard about making a change. He was not thinking about this. If I'd asked him 6 months ago if he was in the market for a job, the answer would have been no. But he saw this opportunity come up, gave it a lot of thought, decided that this only comes along every so often, and that he would like to be part of this. His experience is a little different. Again, I wanted to bring some diverse candidates for consideration here. He's been with the Expressway Authority. Prior to that, he was with the school board for many years. And then he had some prior experience that I think is also valuable. I will say this, that Mr. Rodriguez didn't have school board experience when he went to school board. He didn't have expressway experience when he went to the expressway. And he is certainly, I would say, a top shelf candidate, and should be given further consideration in my opinion. He is also board certified in local government, city and county local government. So I'll talk real quick about Group 2 candidates. Joy Carmichael is currently an assistant county attorney with Orange County. And prior to that, she was Highlands County attorney for, she was with the Highlands County Attorney's Office for a few years and then became county attorney. After leaving there, she went back to, she got a job with Orange County. Again, a solid attorney, no concerns about her past or her experience or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure, we have some, it's become very competitive for this job at this point, and we have some really strong candidates, certainly in Group 1, but I did not want to not present Ms. Carmichael's resume because I think it's a good resume, and I think it's certainly worth including. Jennifer Cockcroft has a little bit different background. She was in the city of Kissimmee for about 10 years, deputy city attorney with Palm Bay for a short while, and has done some different private sector work, which I think is important, as have some of our other candidates. And certainly, she's in the area now. She's got some land use background. But I feel like our Group 1 are candidates that I would say to you that I strongly recommend that you consider them. Internal candidates also, I strongly recommend that you consider them. And I just wanted to make sure that you did get a look at Group 2. So that said, I'm going to open it up for questions. I think I will just add a couple more comments here too. You can see we have some local people, which I think is important. We have some people who live and grew up in Seminole County, which I think is important. I also have, looked at these candidates going forward with what are the big projects that are coming up for Seminole County. Sunrail comes to mind, even the penny sales tax comes to mind, which we talked about when we were doing the county manager recruitment. I will tell you what I always look for too is that, folks that can come in, acclimate to your culture quickly, and become a part of the team quickly. And I will say without a doubt, the folks that I'm recommending to you, I feel they all can do that. So with that said, Chairman, I'm going to take a breather here and just get some feedback from the board and answer any questions that you have.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Commissioners, questions, comments, candidate-related, process-related? Commissioner Constantine, got your hand up. Commissioner Zembauer took in a breath. We'll go with the hand first.
Well, I'll just start it off. First of all, Renee, once again, I've got to compliment you. You've done an incredible job. I do know, as you have said, and you have indicated, that it's a tough market out there. But from our standpoint, we certainly got a lot of good candidates here. Looked at what you had presented to us. And quite frankly, without spending a whole lot of time on it, I think that the Group 1 and the internal candidates are all qualified, all deserve a further analysis and discussion and interviews. And if I don't want to take anything away from my fellow commissioners, but when and if the time is ready, I'm more than willing to make that motion that we move forward to the Group 1 and the internal candidates.
Okay, great. Commissioner Zembauer?
Is that a motion?
I'll make it unless, yes, I'll make it.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Constantine, second by Commissioner Zembauer. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That sounds like really clear direction for you, Ms. Narlock.
I love really clear direction, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you
again.
all. Sure. Thank you all very much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We had several presentations this morning that I know there were folks that wanted to make public comment on. We will take those comments as a part with the comments related to the consent agenda. So I'll move forward with the consent agenda, and then we can ask for comments on both. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has a right to be heard on all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners is acting on ministerial or emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statutes. Public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for group representatives. The right to be heard during a quasi-judicial hearing is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda matters at the end of our meeting, and that's at the end of our 1:30 afternoon meeting. In accordance with the operating policies and procedures of Seminole County Board of County Commissioners, Section 2.175, Public Participation Before the Board, comments shall be limited to the subject being considered by the Board. All comments shall avoid personal attacks, abusive language, and redundancy. Disrespectful, rude, irrelevant, or slanderous remarks or disruptive behavior may subject the individual to removal from the board chambers. The chairman may curtail repetitious comments. Ms. Beach, if you wouldn't mind asking the folks who had comment about any of our presentation items to come forward first.
Yes, ma'am. The first one is Alexander Hockaday, and he is speaking on item 9.
All right. Mr. Hockaday, if you would give us your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Alexander Hockaday. I live at 2838 Sun Lake Loop in Lake Mary. And I'd like to talk about agenda item number 9, the CFX feasibility study. In my personal opinion, I believe that the highway extension, the connector, is quite frankly a waste of money. That land is far better used, for example, for residential properties. Just looking at the revenue from those properties, right? You get property tax from that, whereas from the highway development, you're not going to get any revenue from that beside tolls, and those are going to be shared, obviously, with CFX and the Turnpike. Commissioner Hare, you mentioned quality of life is going to be improved by the highway. I happen to disagree with that. I have a best friend who lives in one of the neighborhoods that is right next to, I believe it's alignment 2 and its various sub-options. Basically, from his backyard, he's going to be able to have a beautiful view of the highway. In my opinion, that's not really an increase of quality of life, having a highway in your backyard. Secondly, the proposal or the feasibility study here mentioned that 17,000 cars are going to be, taking this connector. Now the question is, are these 17,000 cars coming off of our local streets, or are these cars new traffic that's generated by the airport, by the better connection, by, I'm assuming, more connections to different airports, flights. Also, I believe that this money that's being spent, $140 million, somewhere around there I believe it was, is much better spent on our local arterial roads, for example, Lake Mary Boulevard, right? East Lake Mary Boulevard specifically in this case, right? It's, I'm going to be quite honest, it's a little under-maintained. Obviously, like you guys have said, it's not meeting, the congestion standards, I guess you would call that, for the county. The question is, do we really need to build a highway to solve that problem, or can we look at more local solutions that are going to take, Lake Mary Boulevard and address the traffic on there without adding a new highway? For example, better cycling connections, right? The bike lane on Lake Mary Boulevard, it's not a bike lane, it's a shoulder. It's the side of the road. It's a few feet on the side. The sidewalks are also, they're there, but they're quite exposed. They're right next to the road. There's no shade. It's not walkable. It's not bikeable, and we're going to add a highway to it, right? There's very little natural choice in this highway. So in my opinion, I believe the commissioners should take a very hard look at whether or not we really need this highway and whether or not it's actually going to improve the quality of life of other citizens in Seminole County. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we hope you'll attend the public meeting and share the information that you learned this morning. All right.
Our next speaker is Katrina Shaddix, also on item 9.
Ms. Shaddix, 3 minutes, if you would. And
Katrina Shaddix, Executive Director, Bear Warriors United. I'm also a member of the CFX Environmental Advisory Board, so we've had 2 meetings already on this issue. And if we listen to the presentation, which we all did, 117 acres of St. John's water management conservation lands were mentioned, as well as Eagle's Nest. We also know there's crested caracara on that property, and we also know manatees will be negatively impacted because manatees have go into Lake Jessup. And to have mitigation, well, all I'm going to say is about mitigation, it's simply giving permission to an agency or developer to pay for the destruction to kill the protected species and to destroy their habitat. So mitigation is not an acceptable thing for this project. The only acceptable alternative to this project is the no-build option. And also, we've mentioned to CFX that commingling an elevated highway with existing roads would be amazing. It would make everyone happy, and that $140 million would be better spent on those elevated highways. Also, we do know that Florida ranks #1 in the nation for most polluted waters and surface waters and lakes. Lake Jessup is already polluted. This project is going to make that worse. There's no way to improve water quality with more impervious surfaces and more roads. So like I said, the commingling of an elevated highway would be amazing. I think that would support Seminole County's natural choice motto. And it would be something that would not get opposition from the public. And also, if y'all could advertise I know the June meeting was mentioned, if you could give the address publicly so people listening could know. I know it's at, I think, the middle school, but if y'all could do that, that would be great. And, one last thing, CFX, when they have these meetings, is second to none with allowing public comment and following up. I love them. They're amazing. I wish every agency had their kind of public involvement. So I can't say enough good things about them. They're great. And we'll be having a lot of people attend that June meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaddix. And I'm sure we'll also advertise that on social media and our website and what have you for that meeting. All right.
One more speaker, and this is on item number 22, and it is Mr. Owens.
All right.
Hello, my name is Mike Owens. I'm the president of the North Cove Homeowners Association. We're located on E.E. Williamson in Seminole County.
And your address for the record, Mr. Owens.
My address is
Protected?
secure.
Protected.
Yes, deputy.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, retired deputy. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So at any rate, I'm here in favor of this right here on item number 22. As you well know, I've written a lot of emails, a lot of letters and everything else, sent a lot of pictures to try to get this thing going. The big thing that we're, the approval of removing removing the asphalt and installing concrete, this hopefully will facilitate the installation of new oak trees, where we had a bunch of oak trees clear cut in order to make this process, this trail. So that's all. I'm here in favor of.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Any other comment forms?
No, ma'am.
All
Not
right.
for the consent agenda.
Okay.
Commissioner?
Let's see if the county managers.
Yeah, I'm going to ask him if there are any changes or modifications. Do you have something you need to jump in on ahead of time?
I was just going to say, from the comments that we've had, I mean, all of us agree, and that's why we talked about the fact that they were doing the study. All of those questions need to come out in the study with the CFX. So I'm glad that they brought that up. I want them to participate, and those concerns and questions need to be evaluated while we go the process. If we don't go through the process, we'll never know whether it is feasible or needed.
Good point. County Manager, any agenda modifications?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I actually have one on the consent and then one on a regular agenda, if you want me to handle that one as well.
Sure,
if that
that'd
would
be great.
all right.
Thank you.
So item number 27, make sure I have that one right. Yeah, I'd like to go poll that. We just got a little ahead of ourselves. We're going to talk to the board about this later, so I will just pull that one. And under the regular agenda number 32, we are going to pull that one as well.
All right.
27 and 32?
Oh, I'm sorry.
32.
Sorry. Thank you for, and then, there was an amended agenda, and we added 10A as a proclamation on there, so sorry about that. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, do we have, yes, Commissioner Herr?
I'll be happy to make a motion to approve items 10, including 10A through 31 minus 27.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Delary. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
And, Madam Chair, before we go to the next item, if I could, one of the items here today is very interesting, I think, to a lot of people that I'm sure you've received phone calls, we all have, concerning the traffic congestion on Wekiva Springs Road. And I just wanted people to know that one of the items in the consent was that Wekiva Springs Road was going to have a turn lane into the school. And I think that's extremely important, so help is on the way.
All right, that's great news. I will say, we have one regular agenda item, and if there's anyone here from the public that is wishing to speak on that item, now is the time to turn in your comment forms to Ms. Beach. And that'll be item number 32. So if you are here and want to comment after the regular agenda item number 32, we want to make sure that you turn in your public comment form. That's the yellow form.
That's the one I pulled, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. 33. I misspoke.
33.
Thank you. It's a county manager and staff briefing. Item number 33.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you did.
I had the amended.
That's all right. That is all right. Rebecca Hammock, save me.
All right. Good morning. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. This is item 33 on the agenda. This is a staff briefing under the county manager's agenda for the full draft of the Land Development Code. The purpose of today's presentation is to present hopefully have a final presentation / work session on the full draft of the proposed Land Development Code amendments and concurrent comprehensive plan amendments that are needed in order to implement those changes in the Land Development Code. And we're requesting feedback and direction prior to bringing the ordinances forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and to the Board of County Commissioners. At this time, we are planning to bring the transmittal of the comprehensive plan amendments and the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the Land Development Code changes to the August 2nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and then to the September 12th BCC meeting. Again, that will be transmittal and the first reading, and then we'll be bringing those items back for adoption, hopefully in December. So the agenda for today is we're going to go over major changes to the Land Development Code. Eliza and I are going to both be presenting this morning, and Eliza will be going over those major changes. She's going to be doing a section-by-section review of the proposed Land Development Code and see if there's any comments or questions on those specific changes. And then I am going to come back up and go over a few follow-up items that we had previous discussion on at a prior presentation. And then I will do a brief update on stakeholder feedback. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eliza, and then I'll be back up after her presentation to go over those follow-up items. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So as we do every time, looking at the schedule, we're close to the finish line here. Last work session anticipated before adoption. So this is the final board review of the full draft. Just to give a little bit of history, and we haven't done this every time, but the code was originally adopted in 1960. The last major update was in 1980. So this is somewhere between a major and an incremental update. There's some significant changes and there's some significant reorganization, but it's an important step for the county. I hit the wrong, oh, there we go, okay. So in terms of goals, it really ranges the board from very particular updates about titles of staff, all the way to some significant policy-related updates to implement the comprehensive plan. We've done work sessions on a number of new standards, such as those related to a new mixed-use corridor district, missing middle housing, solar energy systems, assembly use standards, and parking garage standards, as well as major revisions to sections including the affordable housing residential zone, arbor regulations, additions related to Florida-friendly, as well as rural non-residential design standards and reduction of minimum living area in certain categories. So now what we'd like to do is just go through a chapter by chapter, and for the zoning, a little bit section by section, very brief overview. And the intent is to briefly pause after each, see if there's any questions, and I'll keep moving unless I hear questions, or get other direction from the board. So these three, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 5, are largely minor updates, procedural updates. The definitions, any significant changes to that would be related to one of our other updates, like the missing middle or the mixed use. Any questions on these chapters? Board members?
No. If you have a question, I'm just going to ask you to jump in.
Okay.
And if there's nothing, Liza, then you just keep moving.
Seeing none. We wanted to give you a sense of the reorganization of Chapter 30 in particular. So this Chapter 30 will look very different. In some cases, it's not going to actually be very different. It's an organizational update. I especially like to show how there's essentially Part 66 is an overlay, Part 67 is landscaping and screening, and then we end up back with more overlays. So this is obviously the result of many incremental updates and isn't very well organized to be accessible to the public or to applicants. Whereas the new organization is much more accessible and hierarchical in terms of having things that make sense together, be together in the code. Any questions on organization?
Great.
This slide covers a couple of sections within Chapter 30. Chapter 5 and 7, that's what the tables are meant to represent. This is just a modernization piece of organizing that same information into a different structure where we've made targeted changes. Those have been shown to the board previously. Section 6, additional use standards. The significant updates there, as previously mentioned, were civic assembly and solar. And special zoning districts was that update I just mentioned to affordable housing, the residential affordable housing district, to make that more manageable because there haven't been a lot of applications under that zone.
All right, any questions
on this? Seeing none. We've added one of our new chapters is special zoning districts, so we can gather these zoning districts that make sense into one chapter. The two that I want to highlight are the missing middle zoning district. Now, Rebecca mentioned this earlier. We've talked about some great new things that can happen with this missing middle zoning district. This is an area where, in spirit, it actually does implement the comprehensive plan, but there are some changes that need to be made to the comprehensive plan to make that work in terms of which specific housing types weren't necessarily anticipated by the comprehensive plan update that was done probably about 10 years ago. So those corresponding comp plan updates will be brought before you along with the adoption of the code updates. Any questions there? Special zoning districts, again, so this is that mixed-use corridor district. To highlight, again, this really is implementation of the previous comprehensive plan with respect to there's been a mixed-use flu district for a long time, but no corresponding zoning district. Now there will be a corresponding zoning district. It does require some minor updates to the comp plan to make that actually functional, so those will accompany. The PD regulation language has been updated to essentially put more teeth into the PDs so that they are accomplishing the county's goals in addition to providing some flexibility to applicants, but not only providing flexibility to applicants, but really having some alignment with the county's goals. Section 9 and 10, supplemental regulations, the big change there is related to truck parking. We also talked about non-residential standards, elimination of the 1792 overlay that isn't applicable anymore, as well as some updates to titles again. Any questions? Seeing none. Parking and loading standards, this is another modernization update. We've spent some time on this in terms of revising the number of parking spaces to not require more than is actually needed and increase that impervious surface for no good reason, as well as design standards as we see more structured parking coming in, having some design standards to make sure that those are aesthetically compatible with the existing community, as well as modernization around EV readiness.
I think we might have a question on EV.
I have a question. In looking through this book, I mean, it's a lot for us to digest in the week that we got it, even though we've been looking at it periodically, because there's some new information in it. Just in the EV standards, you actually show an amperage for how much each parking spot should have. I've actually spoken to quite a few electrical engineers and contractors. You may want to relook at that.
Commissioner Delary, would you help us and point to the area where that's located as
Sure.
we're looking at?
Because the last time we spoke about it, I warned everyone that if we're going to be looking the exact amount of amperage we're going to be requesting, let's see if I can find it again. It will put people into different types of panel sizes and/or transformer requirements. And I know I went over this with Rebecca in my office. Here it is right here. Page 193. It requires that you have a 40-amp breaker for every two. During the presence of Miss Rebecca, I actually spoke to an electrical engineer, and they said you're going to need 80 amps at a minimum. So, and then there's also, with new technology with induction charging, I want to make sure that we're actually looking at the latest and greatest. We shouldn't be actually designing it. We should be just giving people parameters because cars are going to be changing as we move forward. I don't know if 40 amps per space or 80 amps per dual space, as you put here, is going to be required because things are changing. I'm not in the automobile industry. Commissioner Zimbauer is. I don't own an electric vehicle. I have friends that do. But we really need to be looking at this because we're increasing the cost of construction drastically by putting in these requirements. And if we're going to do that, you need, number one, need to be correct. And number two, understand we're going to be getting a lot of phone calls with people asking us, you know, if we're only requiring a 40-amp breaker for two vehicles, and you really need 40 per each vehicle. And then what happens if technology changes, and are we having adapters for plugging in different types of electrical vehicles? We shouldn't be going into that great detail in this. We should just be asking people to do it because you're actually getting into design, and that's not what I don't think we should be doing at this point with a new emerging market. Even though electrical vehicles, people are going to say they're here to stay, which I agree. I'm pro-electric. That's fine, but you're getting into real details here.
Sure, and let me just offer a couple of notes there. I would be happy to get together offline or to do more research on this topic. The explicit intent, and this was something that we were basing on another jurisdiction, they had actually started at 80, and they had reduced it to 40 with the idea being that it would reduce cost for implementation, and that 40 is ideal because everyone's not going to have an electric vehicle. That would spread the capacity over more spaces, while still allowing to charge two vehicles at a lower speed if there are two people parked in that. So it would slow it down. We do want to make sure that people aren't doing the residential charging standard, which is much lower. I think that's class 1, and we want to make sure it's at least class 2. We may be able to make that language a little bit broader while having some minimum standard to ensure that they're not, on an older standard that's not applicable anymore.
I can tell you when you're actually looking at construction and there's a property owner that's trying to get something built, when you're putting in electrical charging devices, you're actually going to a different type of size panel. You're upgrading the panel, you're upgrading the service. It's additional cost. It's just FYI. We will be getting phone calls. You won't be, but we will be.
Commissioner Hurd.
In an effort to better understand the concern it can't just be additional costs for the developer, right? If we...
Going to get passed down.
Well, everything gets passed, right? But that can't be the only cost. If we're all acknowledging that we're moving to electric vehicles, then we got to acknowledge that charging stations, and I think you did this, charging stations need to be there. So the true objection is that we're actually citing that you can't have a residential charging station on a public property?
Let me clarify.
Well, I want Bob
sure.
to...
No, I'm looking at...
Commissioner to qualify the objection.
My objection is we're actually getting into the details of actually telling someone what size circuits to put in, and we should be allowing people to decide for when they're actually designing the either the building or the site, what they're going to be putting in. I promote energy conservation. I promote different types of alternate forms of energy and transportation. But you're actually saying here, 40-amp breaker for every 2 electrical vehicles and a conduit. I mean, you're getting into harsh details here that if I was looking at this, we're putting in a 40-amp breaker for every 2.
Is that the minimum?
It doesn't say that. I'm just reading it. Installation by providing a dedicated electrical capacity in a service panel, 40-amp breaker for every 2 vehicles, a conduit to the space. The space shall be not required to be wired, but even though you're putting it in, you're going to be sizing that panel and that service.
So I would love to hear from Ms. Hammack about this, because I'm thinking that the intention is a minimum.
Good morning again, Rebecca Hammack, Development Services Director. Yes, the 40 amp would be the minimum. However, we can go back and look at this code provision with the consultant again. They have now merged with Kimley Horn and do have experts on staff for EV charging stations. So we can go back and look and see if they have a revised recommendation. So we're happy to look at that, and if 40 amps is not sufficient, then we can increase it to 80 amps.
I wouldn't put an amperage. I say you need an electrical charging station, let them design it. That's why they have their engineers.
I mean, I would think we would, and we can, again, discuss this internally, but I would think we'd want to set a minimum, and then they can choose based on their business model if they want to increase that. And again, in terms of cost, a lot of times what will happen is there will be a charge to use these EV charging facilities.
Commissioner Zembauer.
So to that point, the Society of Automotive Engineers standard is 30 to 50 amps per unit for level 2. If you get into some of the newer technology, actually the amperage is going to drop because of the way that the float is going to go into these type batteries and the technology that's coming forward. I think ultimately there's going to be some changes, and I don't think those changes are going to be to the point of the reverse, meaning that we're going to demand higher amperage as we move forward with technology. It's actually going to be lower amperage as we move forward. So, I'm happy to have that dialogue with staff and understand. I thought what we had collectively decided that we were going to have minimum requirements and let the market drive and not mandate certain things, but at least have some minimal infrastructure to allow some minimal capability at these units. So maybe that just needs to be revisited with staff and understand that.
I think one of the points is that this doesn't say that it's a minimum. It says that this is what it should be.
Correct.
And so whether it should be less or more, there isn't much room for deviation. So I'm certainly open to having it come back for other discussion. But I will also say there was a comment made earlier that we all agree that everybody should move to electric, or that we're moving to electric or whatever. I'm going along to get along, but I'm not in that basket. Just for the record, I'm not in that basket. So, Commissioner Constantine.
And hopefully someday we'll be able to run our cars on H2O. So I understand what you're saying. I mean,
Well,
you
I
know,
kind of like drinking my water. I'm not putting it in my car,
I'm
but-
just, and hydrogen too. I'm just saying the technology has continued to evolve. I was trying to agree with you on that. You know, electric is now, just like, well, gas is now, electric is the future. What the future is after that, I don't know. I just wanted to thank Commissioner DeLore for bringing up this. I think it's timely because we just dropped number 27 because they're looking at, you know, EV stations around the county anyway, our county manager. So I think that what we're striving for here is just to get it right. I think we all understand that we want to have it. So, you know, we've made the point. We're asking the staff now to go back and make sure that it's done right. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, sounds great. Are you comfortable, Rebecca and Eliza, with where we are on that? Okay. Anything else on this particular topic? All right, next one, please.
Another section that has some significant updates is landscaping, screening, buffering, and open space. This also has some corresponding comprehensive plan updates related to conservation of water resources. Any questions on this section?
I think we did have questions that were submitted by Mr. Daly. Rebecca, would you like to address those?
And those were incorporated, correct?
I'd like to hear that.
We did receive some comments from Mr. Daly regarding the proposed updates. We've reviewed those. We are planning on implementing a majority of the changes that he recommended into the final draft that'll be before you with the proposed ordinance. We are still looking into cost per inch if someone decides to contribute to the Arbor Fund instead of actually planting replacement trees. So that's something we'll be working with the consultant on to come up with a reasonable fee per inch. But other than that, I believe we were in agreement with most of Mr. Daly's comments. The only other comment that he had made was with regard to laurel oaks and requiring a replacement of laurel oaks. They are no longer a preferred species within our preferred list. However, we still believe that if a laurel oak is removed, that it should be mitigated for because it does provide ecosystem services.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
And if I may add, the driving thought between the replacement cost is just to meet the market in terms of what the actual cost to replace is.
Commissioner Zembauer?
I would like to have dialogue with my fellow commissioners on this topic. And I understand there are going to be times when you can't plant a tree for whatever reason. The design of the sidewalks, the infrastructure, and so forth. What are my fellow commissioners' thoughts about on that fund? Would it make sense that at some juncture, we offer like an Arbor Day tree giveaway to residents who would like to plant trees that we can make available to them through the funding mechanism? You know, this whole idea that we would plant trees, we can plant them in our parks, we can plant them in our right-of-way, we can do those kinds of things, but there's going to come a time where there's no place to plant a tree. And people may want to plant a tree in their own front yard or backyard. Just a thought, what my fellow commissioners' thoughts might be on that.
Commissioner Herr?
I actually think the entire Arbor Trust Fund process needs to be reviewed. That may be a component of it,
Right.
but the accountability, the collection of it, the accountability of the use of it, the timing of the use of it, the geography of the use of it, I think that's an entire separate conversation that needs to happen at the board level. We're getting to the density at this point in the county where we need to be paying attention to this and set up a good process for the future. So I actually had it on my list of things to worry about of getting that as a future agenda item. And so we've done that today.
I think that's a great idea. I know many of our cities do Arbor Day tree giveaways, and I don't know what the process is for that, but we have, I think, a conversation about it is great, warranted. Commissioner Constantine?
And the tree giveaway Yeah, as you say, is wonderful tree, plants, whatever, especially if they're, things that don't use as much water as some of the others. But I think what Commissioner Herr said, and is something that I had also put down, is the fact that this whole trust fund scenario needs to be really looked at. Frankly, I don't know how much money is in there. I don't know who contributes, who doesn't contribute. I'm not saying I want to see a report every day. But what I do think is just like, should it be in a certain, as you said, a certain location, as opposed to, if you collect it in a certain location, should it be in some geographic area, or could it be used anywhere, and exactly what that criteria is. So I think that is a suggestion I was also going to make. So this is, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Herr, because I think that she is right. We need to take a real hard look at that.
Sounds like there's consensus to bring that back for future.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else on this topic?
So I actually skipped ahead a couple slides because we're crossing over between landscaping and arbor, if you caught that. So there was a significant update to the arbor regulations. If there are specific questions about that, we can address them. But overall, it's about modernizing that section so that there's a minimum tree save requirement that is applicable both to subdivision and site plan. And that's in subdivision, as well as making very clear what the requirements are for replacement, and that the key piece of that Arbor Trust Fund is that right now only penalties go into the Arbor Trust Fund, or at least that's only the thing that's enabled by the code, and this creates a mechanism that if somebody can't meet the requirement, it's not just waived, that there is a way of capturing that replacement cost. Now I'm going to go. Any other questions on that? Seems like I think we're good. Okay. And then going back one, there were some targeted changes with respect to the lighting language in sections 15 and 16. Any questions on that?
Madam Chair? The only question I have with that, I would love to get some input from electrical lighting engineer, because it's not just the glare, it's also the quality of the light that needs to be addressed. And it's not the foot candles.
You're talking about color temperature?
It's
Okay.
color temperature. I didn't want to go there, because now you're getting really technical. And we can get there if you want, because the Kelvin scale will basically tell a lot about what is happening. But I think I'd like to get some information from an electrical lighting person in your group, so we can actually understand what that rendition will look like.
Sure. And that was actually something that was highlighted in the vision plan that we've tagged as a need for the county. That may or may not make it into this update, but it's certainly been tagged as something that's important to discuss.
Because, if you do high-pressure metal sodium, it gets to be a different type of light than LED. It's a snowball effect.
Still doing that?
I don't know if there is anybody,
Old
but
technology.
it's old technology, but it just gives you an example of what that looks like. That's the reason why I brought it up.
Any other questions on that? Sounds like that's a follow-up item. Okay. And I think these are the last two, site plan approval and construction. Site plan approval, that's very much an administrative update, and then the construction hours have been discussed previously. So any further questions on that? And now I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca.
We have a few follow-up items that were discussed more in depth at the previous work session with the board, so I wanted to bring those items back to make sure the board was comfortable with those new definitions and with those new provisions before finalizing the draft of the Land Development Code. And the first follow-up item is commercial kennels. We've had a number of code enforcement issues related to this item, so we went back to strengthen the definition of commercial kennels in the code. And currently, we have a very broad definition. And we are proposing a new definition which is, you can see here, I don't know if you want me to read it, but this is what we're proposing. We are setting limitations on the number of animals that you can have on non-commercial properties, and that is when you would trigger a commercial, be triggered as a commercial kennel under the definition, and it would require appropriate zoning, either as a permitted use or a special exception use. We have exempted fosters, and we are adding definition of foster animal and animal foster to the definition section in order to support that new definition. The next follow-up item.
I have a question on that, Madam Chair.
On the,
Yes.
on the, yeah.
On the kennel?
Yes.
I want to make sure, for the record, this includes ag zone properties?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to get that on the record.
Yes,
Thank you.
and that was part of the reason
Understood.
for implementing the new definition, was to make sure, because of the noise exemption.
Understood.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the next item, follow-up item, is truck parking in residential areas. So currently, Section 9.4 of the Land Development Code says that no trucks having a rated load limit of more than 2 tons or having more than 2 axles may be parked or stored in any residentially zoned area. However, given the size of personal vehicles now, and with SUVs, with pickup trucks, this definition is no longer enforceable. And so we were asked by the Sheriff's Office and Code Enforcement to take a look at this definition because they were having some issues with enforcing the current code. So through a lot of our different work sessions and with talking with the code enforcement officers, we are proposing that we increase the vehicle weight limit to 14,000 pounds and require it to conform to the Federal Highway Administration FH8 vehicle weight class categories of 1 through 3. We are exempting personal pickup trucks and recreational vehicles, and we have added new definitions in the Land Development Code for a personal truck and for a recreational vehicle to support that new provision. And this is an example of the, excuse me, the classes that are used by the Federal Highway Administration, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the Environmental Protection Agency. So what we are proposing is that Class 1 through Class 3 be permitted on residentially zoned properties, and that there is an exemption for personal vehicles as defined by the new definitions. Any questions on that provision?
My only question on this is that we do have people who live in unincorporated areas of the county who are not in an HOA, who have a job, a profession that requires them perhaps to drive a vehicle that is maybe in a Class 4. Are we, I'm thinking of folks who work for cable companies, they drive their Spectrum truck home at night, they may be on call. Are there going to be any types of exemptions for people who have these types of jobs that, you know, they can't leave their home at 2 o'clock in the morning and drive to wherever that truck is parked to then do the call out when the cable is out, or, you know, they've driven this truck home. So for quick response for citizens, is there going to be any type of appeal process or something related to if it's during a hurricane and we have people on call out, even some of our own emergency management vehicles? I just want to make sure that we are not.
So during an emergency, we would not be enforcing this code provision, and most of the time, code enforcement is on hold during those periods because, you know, of that very thing. If we have electricity out and we have people bringing home their trucks, we would not enforce this provision during an emergency if it's a declared state of emergency. And ultimately, this is a policy decision of the board. We have to, if the board wishes to implement this, we're creating a standard for the whole. Of course, there are always exceptions. But in an emergency, of course, we would be exempting them from that provision. But ultimately, it is a policy decision on the board of what type of vehicles you want to allow in residentially zoned areas.
Yeah. I'll just say again that at some point in time, there has to be a place in this county where people can live that have jobs that require them to drive these types of vehicles because they are in service to our community. And they've chosen not to live in an HOA for a reason, because they're prohibited. They're probably not living in a city because they're prohibited, so where else can they live? That's all I'm going to throw out there.
I would share your same sentiments. I mean, with the working class, where people are working either construction or service, you could be exempting a large population, and that's what I'm concerned about.
And I will point out, this is actually, the way the current code is written, this is actually making it less stringent.
Correct.
Yeah. I understand.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I share the same sentiment as the chairman does.
So what class, I guess my question is, what class of my fellow commissioners interested in allowing to be in the neighborhoods? And what I'll say, I'll preface that with an understanding, here's where the real fly in the ointment becomes, the gross vehicle weight rating category. So you can have a bucket truck that has less of a gross vehicle weight rating than a huge pickup truck. So that's where you get into code enforcement. If you're going to go by a gross vehicle weight rating, I'm an owner of a vehicle that fits one of these categories, and just because it's got a bucket truck on it, you're going to write me up as a problem. Then I'm just going to bring my my manufacturer's specification sheet and go, meet your code.
Right.
And we are exempting personal pickup trucks.
Sure, no, understood.
The idea is to try to prevent commercial vehicles from
Right.
parking in residential areas.
Well, I think, it's in my district, I'll be the first one to tell you, I mean, I have people running businesses at residential locations with multiple commercial vehicles.
Yeah, and I get that that's an issue, but if you are a construction worker or someone who drives your vehicle home, where else where are you allowed to park your truck? I mean, maybe you are a one-shop construction man, woman who does this for a living, and now we've just made it
Well, I think most of this.
so that you can't park your vehicle at your, I'm just putting it out there as a cautionary tale.
In that scenario, I think you're going to have minimum where somebody's driving a huge commercial truck that is a plumber, is a journeyman doing some other type of work, as compared to a huge moving truck. I think that's two separate, and I don't think this code's going to impact that construction worker, that handyman, that plumber, that electrician who's driving a van. And quite frankly, in those trades, we're seeing the vehicles decrease in size with the new minivans or European-style vans, if you will. Is there going to be some exceptions? Sure. Where maybe there's a supply truck for a contractor that somebody has to drive home one night. I frankly think staff's done a pretty decent job in trying to thread the needle. Understand there's going to be some one-off, some exceptions, and I'm okay with some kind of appeal process, along those lines, but certainly a lot of this is driven from citizens who continue to grasp with, why do I have 3 commercial trucks parked next to me and nobody can do anything about it? And I call code enforcement and they do nothing about it.
Right, I understand, and I look, if we start getting a bunch of, maybe we can ask staff to keep an eye on this, give us an update over the course of 6 months, a year, whatever it is after this is implemented. If we start to see that we are hurting the people who are trying to serve our community, maybe we need to relook at this.
Sure.
I will tell you, in my neighborhood, and I've used my neighborhood many, many times, people just do whatever they want anyway. So whether we change this code or not, they're still going to do what they want to do. So just putting it on the record.
Sure.
Let's ask the question this way, if I may, Madam Chairman. Rebecca, how many vehicles are out there that are in this category of 3 and 4 that are above the 14,000 pound? I think that's the question.
I wouldn't know the number. I will say that Commissioner Lockhart brings up a good point. We are a complaint-driven code enforcement, so we're not going to be proactively going through the county and looking for vehicles that exceed this weight limit or this class type. It is going to be based on, complaint-driven. I would say that a majority of the time that we do get a code enforcement complaint, it's usually for egregious reasons. But because of the way the code is currently written, code enforcement was not comfortable enforcing it.
Could we not do a search on with the tax collector, with DMV, and scrub it so we just know how many vehicles are registered in this area that are above 14,000 pounds?
Good.
Without knowing where they're at.
But that doesn't mean it's going to be at a certain residence.
I understand that, but it'd be nice to know if that number does exist.
No, like in my corporation,
Well, but
I have
it's gonna
trucks
sit
that
on
are
a
registered
business.
that are parked any given place, it's not where they're registered.
Right.
I
Commissioner Hur?
realize that.
I'm sorry, I know you've been wanting to
Well,
speak.
I just want to point out that we've gotten less restrictive. If we're going to open it wide up, we have to have a whole different set of regulations about where it's parked, or we're creating a safety issue on roads and neighborhoods with school buses and people walking and blind spots and all that. So I think the fact that it's opened up and we've agreed to monitor it and figure out if we're really creating a problem, we're complaint-driven, which maybe we've just given a bunch of people the idea that maybe they should start complaining, so I'll stop saying that. But I think we need to move past this. I think opening it up wider than it's already opened up is going to create a whole set of unintended safety consequences that we have not anticipated. The folks in most of these neighborhoods are parking them in their own property, somehow, some way, front yard, backyard, side yard, whatever. But when you open it up wide, you got to start saying, and it can't be on the road.
It already can't be on the road, correct? I mean, that is a violation already. You can't park in the road?
We allow on-street
I don't
parking.
know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't, that's a whole separate set of regulations that has to happen.
And that's a good point, because our local roads in residential neighborhoods may not be built and rated for that heavy of a vehicle.
All right, we got it, we're going to keep track.
I got it.
All right,
Got it.
we're keeping track.
I got it.
All right, thank you for allowing me to go down that path.
The next follow-up item is accessory structures. So we are proposing amendments to Section 30.1345. This was also mostly due to code enforcement issues that we've had in the past. So we are proposing in making it clear that your accessory structures are supposed to be incidental to your primary structure. So we've set size limitations, and we've also are establishing that they have a certain architectural design so that they fit into the residential character of the neighborhood. We did provide some exemptions for agriculturally zoned areas, so that if you are in an agriculturally zoned area and you are building a barn or a silo or a stable, then of course you are exempt from that size limitation. Okay. The next item is a new topic that we just wanted to touch on to see if there is interest in staff looking into this further. We are planning to bring this topic up as part of the ear-based amendments. We actually already have it included in our discussion that will be before you in August. And this is related to septic systems. As you know, in the county, there are areas that are not required to connect to sanitary sewer due to the connection requirements in our comprehensive plan, which simply state that they have to adhere to the Florida statutes. We also have an area within the county that is a priority focus area that is already required to install enhanced septic systems. So we wanted to bring this topic to the county to get direction on bringing this forward in the future and see what you would like to discuss related to the advanced septic systems. There are two types of advanced septic systems. There is the in-ground nitrogen-reducing biofilter and an aerobic treatment unit.
So, Rebecca, I think, and the county manager and I talked about this a little bit, because everything that we have worked on to date has been workshopped significantly and the public has had opportunity to comment, I feel like that if we're going to address that, it needs to be at a later date with the other process.
Okay.
There's a lot of parts and pieces there that I'm.
So
We could do that. This is brand new.
Yep.
Concur.
Okay.
Got it.
So maybe.
Not against the idea, but I concur.
Yeah,
Got it.
we're opening up a whole new can of worms right now with this. So we'll talk
Sure.
about it at a later date.
Absolutely. I have it on.
Okay.
Great. All right.
All right, well, then I will move on to the public participation and stakeholder feedback that we have received through this Land Development Code process. As you know, this has been in process for several years, more than 3 years. We've had 3 community meetings. We've had 5 meetings related to the rural non-residential design standard. We've had 14 work sessions with the board. We've provided a full draft of the LDC at the 5 previous work sessions with the board. We've worked with the Development Advisory Board throughout the process and had many discussions and meetings with them on the proposed items. We've also presented at the PBS back in March, and we have emailed drafts to all the stakeholders, which includes citizens, professionals, industry professionals, engineers, and we've also given them the last 5 iterations of the proposed draft. So with regard to outstanding feedback and things that are still in process that we're looking at and hoping to finalize, the first one, resident stakeholder, we have received feedback regarding the cluster subdivision provisions within the East Rural area. And our recommendation is to address that as part of the ear-based amendment discussions, because that will also require amendments to the comprehensive plan if the board desires to make changes related to that. The next one, as I mentioned, we've been working with the Development Advisory Board quite closely on the proposed changes. We've implemented a number of their recommendations based on their professional expertise. One of the proposed amendments that we have not changed based on their feedback and that they are not in agreement with is we are proposing in the R3, R3A, and the R4 multifamily zoning districts that there be a requirement to prohibit garage doors from facing public right-of-ways, and this would enhance aesthetics and promote walkability. And DAB has said they're not in agreement with that. They would rather have the design flexibility. Staff is not proposing to make that change, but I did want to bring it to your attention so that you know that there was opposition to that proposed amendment. The last stakeholder feedback that we've received is that I wanted to bring to your attention is the Friends of Wekiva. I believe we provided a copy of that letter to you. I believe Mr. Spain had sent that letter to the commissioners as well. We are in agreement with his recommendations. Currently, the proposed amendments to the Arbor Code to Chapter 60 exempt single-family residential lots, developed single-family residential lots that are 3 acres or less. Currently, it's 5 acres or less, but through the previous work sessions with the board, it was agreed upon to amend that to 3 acres or less. In the Wekiva area, there are design standards that require that 50% of the trees on developments be preserved. So they've pointed out there is some inconsistency between Chapter 60, our arbor regulations, and the Wekiva River Protection Area Design Standards. So we are going to make those 2 things consistent.
Okay.
And with that, that completes my presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Any additional questions before we go to public comment? Commissioner Zembauer.
I just want to make sure, we spoke in my office about this concern on these accessory dwelling units and so forth, this whole concept that when there is a site plan put forward, the civil engineering is done and performed, that we're signing off on it based on, that is what that plat is going to be. Then moving forward, it's subsequently sold, a homeowner purchases it, they come in and build a shed, they put a swimming pool on it. I want to make sure during this process that we're handling that additional loss of impervious area and how that's going to be handled through the building department, et cetera, et cetera.
So yes, so in this particular amendments, we have not addressed the impervious area, but we do plan to bring that back in the future. We're going to have to work with the civil engineers to determine if we want to set maximum impervious areas based on zoning district. That was something that we had talked about previously, and there was some disagreement on whether it should be by zoning, by lot size, so that's something we need a little bit more time to analyze, but we do hope to bring that back with the ear-based amendments and the concurrent land development code changes that will have to occur because of the ear-based amendments. But
Right.
that is something I agree that we need to look at, because the subdivision is designed for a certain amount of impervious area, and the more impervious area you add through your accessory structures, then eventually you're going to exceed that volume of stormwater that your pond was designed for.
Absolutely.
I will say on our infill lots and on our large acreage pieces, they do go through a drainage review.
Sure.
But again, if you're in a platted subdivision, they're not going through
Right.
a lot of times a drainage review.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
We'll let you know if we have anything else. Ms. Beach, I know we have some public comment.
We do. The first one is Nancy Harmon, followed by Gray Wilson.
And just as a reminder, if you would state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Nancy Harmon, 752 Pioneer Way, Geneva, Florida. I'd like 6 minutes, please.
And who are you representing, Ms. Harmon?
Geneva Citizens Association.
So if there's anyone else here wishing to speak for that group or with that group, then?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the one. Got me stuck with me. First of all, Commissioner Zimbar, that issue you just brought up with regards to the accessory dwelling, I'm very concerned about that too with regard to flooding, but one of the things I'd like to suggest that perhaps right now when you consider a plat and when a developer is going to develop, that they be restricted to the size of house that they're going to put on a piece of property with an anticipation that there would be a pool or something else, because most people would have pools. Just something to think about, that there should not be. Today, when you develop, you say this 50 by 80 piece of property is going to have a 1,200 square foot home on it, with no anticipation whatsoever that there's going to be a pool. I think if you restrict the size of the house to the amount of land with regards to future development, that may help with the flooding situation down the road when people want to put a pool in, or even an additional home for mother-in-law's suite. Just a thought. All right. Section 4.2.3, which is optional cluster provision for the rural area. I would really appreciate the staff going back and looking at density bonus again, because density bonus, according to our comp plan, is only applied when you're doing affordable housing. Within this document section, it states that a density bonus may be awarded based on the amount of buildable land preserved as open space. I'd like to give you an example of how this really doesn't make sense. You have 100 acres, they're zoned A10. Without a density bonus, you would be allowed, in a cluster development, you would be allowed 10 lots and 90 acres of open space. If you apply the density bonus, you're given 20 lots and 80 acres of open space. You actually lose open space and you increase the density in that design process. So I don't think that the density bonus is doing anything to encourage an increase of open space. In fact, it decreases and it increases density, and there is no affordable housing associated with it. Therefore, I think it should be struck, or it should be stated, not that it's to increase open space, but instead to provide for affordable housing. Just a recommendation. I also want to go to the PDs. I think I got that all. Okay, PDs. So I looked at the PD language update, and this would be 851, and it states that an example of development concept that may be appropriate for a PD zoning include but are not limited to enhanced protection for natural resource areas, mixed use, or transit-oriented development, and infill development or redevelopment. An increase in density and intensity alone shall not be sufficient justification to seek an alternative to conventional zoning district. Then when you go to paragraph 8.5.2, permitted use, it states that the intensity and density must be limited to what is stated in the comp plan. I think those two statements are kind of ambiguous, or they could create some kind of ambiguity where a developer will come in and say, I'm going to increase intensity and density as part of my PD, and while that isn't a justification for a PD, it does go against this section that says you have to have your intensity and density limits that meet the comp plan. So I think that needs to be looked at. Additionally, we've talked about this for the past 3 years, I think, PDs and how difficult they can be, how contentious it is with the citizens, with commissioners trying to figure out what's this and what's that. It says in here now that we're talking about an innovative and flexible approach, but yet I have to ask the question, is it not that the future is to have this, like the missing middle? The missing middle gives you that multi-use development. Is that not going to be a conventional use? And if it is, does it have to be a PD? I'm trying to understand why we can't write the regulations now that look to the future, that say this is what a conventional would be, which includes missing middle to the degree that we believe it should be, that would include the transit-oriented development and infill. I just don't see why we want to spend taxpayer money, your time, developer time, trying to play this game when in fact we have the skill to write the code to look to the future to 2045. Our code right now is still looking at 2020. We're just not looking forward. Solar, yes, but I really, really think this flexibility and innovation needs to be defined. We need, as a county, to be saying what innovation we're looking for, whether it be 3-story, 2-story, missing middle, more of, but I don't think that's in here. And additionally, when you describe what are the conditions for a PD, it's still down to pick 2 out of 8 and you go through. So I'd like PD to be looked at really, again, with the future in mind of walking trails, people being able to bike to work, et cetera. Thank you for your time.
Next. Gray Wilson, followed by George Sellery.
And Mr. Gray, if you will, before Mr. Wilson speaks, if you would just make Mr. Gray.
What's that?
Gray Wilson, Darren Gray. Sorry, I realized the confusion that just occurred there. Mr.
He spells it wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
For some of these, I've noticed Mr. Chipok is taking notes. For some of these comments where there are questions attached, if maybe you could coordinate follow-up, because we want to make sure that we respond.
I agree.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Mr. Wilson.
My apologies. Gray Wilson, I'm here representing Friends of the Wekiva River. I don't know if I'll need my full 6 minutes, but I appreciate that. First off, I want to thank Rebecca Hammock through the process, working with Friends of the Wekiva on a couple key issues. I think we see the transparency and how important that is, and open lines of communication, and very much appreciate her quick responses and input. It's been very, very helpful. Particularly in the packet, I believe, at the end of the 300 pages of your 1,100-page packet, on the Land Development Code is the letter that she referenced from our attorney, Brent Spain, who's a land development or a land use attorney expert, on the addressing the inconsistency that we were concerned about between the county's environmental design standards within the WRPA and the county's general arbor permitting requirements. And we concur that his resolution to that makes sense. It addresses the inconsistency that the whole purpose of redoing the Land Development Code, and we're in agreement. We hope that you will adopt that too as part of your overall adoption of this Land Development Code language change. This particular process is probably never going to happen again in my lifetime. I appreciate the county going about doing this. It's been a long time coming, and probably we're looking 15 or 20 years down the road. And hopefully future commissions will not even know the type of changes you've put in here, make their job easier and more clear. I think that's the whole intent on this. And on these two particular issues, the clustering and the inconsistency here on the arbor permit language, at least in these 2 points of area for our particular mission, addresses it really well. So we hope you adopt it with those particular items in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to be real clear question. I think we heard our staff say they're going to incorporate that already, right?
They're acquiescing to their request,
They're
yes.
doing that, correct? Thank you.
For the record, Ms. Hammock shook her head yes. Mr. Sellery, and then who's next?
Katrina Shaddix.
And I'm here with the Lake Forest HOA on this one.
So everyone in Lake Forest is behind you on what you're about to say.
The Lake Forest Board is, yeah, the board is.
Duly noted.
And I've been dealing with this one for the same 3 years. And I want to start by just taking a moment to thank everybody. This has been one enlightening process for the last 3 years. You have a wonderful staff. I don't always agree with them. I was part of staff at one time. But you really have some talented professionals. I see them all over this room, not just in development and fire services, public works. You've got a great staff. Don't let anyone steal them away from you, because you really need that expertise and the knowledge that they bring, because they make you all look better in everything you do. So in starting, one of the main issues that we had has already been resolved, I think. I've spoken to several of you about it, and I think we've come to a conclusion on that, and we're doing good. I wanted to take a step back just because of the truck discussion you had, and maybe something you want to look at. We've had this issue in Lake Forest in certain areas. Trucks are bigger. Driveways aren't. And what we have to deal with now is trucks that extend into the sidewalk, forcing people to walk into the street, which is a state law violation. You're not supposed to block the sidewalk, forcing residents into the street, even though it's your driveway. So one of the thoughts is maybe looking at something where driveway requirements for new construction and stuff is of a sufficient size, because a lot of these trucks won't even fit in a garage. Heathrow had that issue, we've had that issue, and a lot of people are lucky that they can fit it in their driveway. Others are not. Retreat at Wekiva is notoriously small on driveways, where my one son-in-law lives. So just something to think about, maybe driveways as a compromise on some of the oversized vehicles going forward. I wanted to touch base with you too on an issue that's been near and dear to our heart lately, which is open space and retention ponds. And I haven't looked at all the most recent code updates, so I'm just going to go over some of the stuff we've talked about before to make sure. But one of the issues that came up as we were doing the basin study is the definition of the 100-year storm has changed a little bit, the number of inches of rain and things, which makes sense over a time period. Unfortunately, when our ponds were built in Heathrow, Alaqua, Lake Forest back in the late 80s, those standards were different. And right now, we've got 3 feet of muck, and we're all cleaning them out. I would highly encourage, as we've talked about before, to have something in developer agreements that when they turn these subdivisions over to, when they turn the HOA over to a group of citizens who have no clue, that there's some kind of requirement that they provide a maintenance plan for those retention ponds. I mean, it's just really simple. Then we put it in our reserve study. We're all kind of going crazy with this, trying to, go back, figure out how much money now, and so we have to bring in experts, a lot of them which work at the county as county contractors. So also with that, we want to make sure that we don't make those retention ponds attractive to be at the water's edge for children and for pets, because we know just about every body of water has a gator in it. We just had an incident in Lake Forest 2 weeks ago where we had a bunch of 3-year-old girls and 4-year-olds splashing around in the lake right past the sign that they couldn't read that said, warning, alligator, snakes, etc. So, but we have a beachy area there, and because that looks like a beach, that's where they go. So we ended up having to make some adjustments for that, but I encourage you, do not make the edge of the water attractive to kids and pets. It's just not a good combination, and there's ways of doing that. Again, I also think the smaller retention ponds should have a fountain. And a lot of developers do that anyway because they don't want the entrance all scummed over with algae and stuff. So you don't need it in the bigger ones like we have in Heathrow and Lake Forest necessarily, but we do have some smaller retention ponds in our areas, and we do have fountains in those areas, and it kind of moves the water around. So, and I think, again, signage on these retention ponds, having some nice, signage, just like we have the bear signage and stuff like that, makes it easy for all these newcomers moving in. We've had so many newcomers, and none of them are from Florida. They're from out west and up north, and they have no clue about the bears and the snakes and the alligators, and they just don't understand this, so we're trying to hand out literature. So I would encourage you to look at that. And again, I think I'm just going to finish by saying at the very beginning, like Rebecca said, they've worked extensively with residents and with the DAB. The DAB has got a different interest sometimes than residents. There are a lot of developers that do look closely at quality of life. That's what residents value, is quality of life. So I think if we can get those two groups to work together, we can solve all the problems going forward in Seminole County. And I think with your help, we can maybe merge those groups a little bit and get more of a dialogue between them and solve a lot of these issues. Thank you very much.
Ms. Shaddix? And we're just going to stick with 6 minutes because everybody's got a group they're going to represent today. So
thank you.
Why not?
Okay. Katrina Shaddix, 1011 Seneca Oak, Geneva, Florida, 32732. First of all, on the advanced septic system, I have something that's going to save y'all a lot of money and get it done quicker and better. It wasn't on the agenda, so I'll bring it up later this afternoon, but would love to have that included in the workshops on the advanced treatment system. This technology, if the state uses it, will save $1 billion just on the septic tanks on the Indian River Lagoon. So it's a game changer, it's an industry disruptor, and I think y'all are gonna love it. Because anytime you can do something quicker, better, and cheaper, that's what we want to do. Second, the kennels. Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks staff, Rebecca, Mary. They've done an amazing job in all of these revisions. And the kennel is especially near and dear to my heart. I live out in Geneva, not just in the rural boundary, but the rural part of Geneva. So surrounding my 20 acres that I live on, I have kennels to the north, to the south, and to the west. It's disturbing what I listen to. Last week, there seemed to be a group of dogs ganging up on another dog, and she cried in pain. I don't even know if anyone went out there to stop it, but these dogs are not treated like members of the family. It's horrible, and I can attest to this firsthand because my uncle used to have dogs in a kennel for hunting, and he treated those animals with absolute, I don't even want to go into it because it's super upsetting, but anything you can do to fix the kennel problem would be great. And I wanted to make sure that the solar arrays are great. I want to make sure there's no deforestation to build those solar arrays. We've seen it all around the state where they'll go and clear out a whole forest and then put solar arrays and think they're doing something good. And that's actually counterproductive because we are doing solar to reduce carbon. And when you tear down a forest, that destroys the carbon absorbers. It also destroys the carbon sinks that forests are. So all of the carbon dioxide that is captured and stored by the forest are now destroyed, and that goes back into the air. Super, super destructive to destroy a forest for solar arrays. The solar arrays would be best put on existing impervious surfaces in our parking lots. Just think about all the mall parking lots we have that are deserted, and we're always looking for the shaded spot. I know I am. I will park a mile away from any place and walk if I can get under a tree. And there are some really, really great designs. You just build these shaded covers over parking spaces. You put the solar panels on top, and then you hook up the electric car charging stations. The businesses that are adjacent, like malls or strip malls, will use the energy produced from the solar panels and make money charging for people to charge their cars. And no one that has an electric car minds paying for this. So it's definitely a capitalist opportunity to make money to charge for cars. But I have 2 electric cars, and just to let everyone know, there's free charging at the Nissan dealership. And it's a quick one. But if we could look into doing all of the solar arrays on existing parking lots, and there's also there was a great article in Time Magazine, and it says the overlooked solar power potential of America's parking lots. And I don't know if y'all can see this, but it's just super simple. We already have the parking lots there. They're already creating heat, and you just put these solar arrays over the parking spaces. You can make money, save the planet, and keep everyone's car shaded so they don't burn their hands when they reach on the steering wheel. And oh, in the last place, there's City of Altamont Springs also put solar arrays on a retention pond, so that's a good idea. And I agree with George Celery about making the retention ponds not attractive to kids to go swim and play in or get attacked by a gator. And if we could do solar arrays on the retention ponds at a fountain and do the living shorelines to make it a bird sanctuary, it's a win-win for all. I think that's it. I have a minute and a half left. What else can I talk? No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, thanks to the staff, because they really have done an amazing job, and to y'all for initiating this, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Shaddix, could you forward the the article that you showed the board from your laptop? Could you forward that to the clerk's office and to Rebecca Hammock, please?
Yes.
So we have it in the record?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good catch.
The last speaker is Joe Humphreys.
Is that working? Joe Humphreys, 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. A lot of stuff here today. We've heard an awful lot about the missing middle. I think I would like to echo some of the comments that were made about staff. I think the staff is the abused middle, because they're the ones that get stuck between you guys, us, the DAB, that they have done for, as George said, 3 years. It's been a long haul. But as Grace said, some of us, this is probably our last rodeo for this stuff. So we really want to make sure that we get this right. So I like to look at things from the 30,000-foot level. Okay. This is from the National Wild and Scenic Rivers. We know we have one of those here. There's only 2 of them in the state. And these maps are actually a little dated. These are probably 2 or 3 years old at this point. But this shows how vulnerable that this whole area is because of development, how much land we've lost to development. this is, again, this is where we are. Again, this is 2 or 3 years old at this point. So this is why we're so concerned about trying to maintain the forest coverage that we have, that we've lost. And so we just want to make sure that we're protecting that. I've talked to an awful lot of people that live in the entire area, people that in some cases have lived there their entire lives, in some cases 2, 3, 4 generations. And when I told them under current arbor rules in the county, that every tree that they own, my subdivision's a prime example. When I polled all of my neighbors, I said, you realize that all of our 1-acre lots, we could cut every one of our trees down, and several of them are 100 to 200 years old, maybe older. They were stunned. Like, what? But what about the Wekiva protection area? I said, but again, county rules as far as arbor is concerned supersedes the state legislation. So they said, well, we need to fix that. And again, thanks to Friends of Wekiva and also staff, I think hopefully we're changing that. And this is why. We talk about stormwater issues and such. Those are where the water goes. We know that those trees suck up an awful lot of water. The other thing is pertaining to the buffers, and you've seen, some of you have been to my subdivision where buffers became a problem. And we think, again, in this particular area, that we need to increase, make sure that there's enough buffering between existing subdivisions and incoming subdivisions, particularly in reference to that, which came up at the recent Wekiva Commission meeting, the Wild and Scenic, because of the fact that we are trying to protect and maintain these wildlife corridors, something that the governor has obviously made a recent issue about and has dedicated a fair amount of money in this session to, as I think we heard this morning. So buffering is critical. The problems that I have in my neighborhood have to do pretty much with one thing, and that's the buffering with the development that came in next to us, and we didn't maintain proper buffering. And we need that for, obviously, we'll keep the bears out of people's neighborhoods if they have someplace else to go. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Humphries.
That, and that, thank you.
Yeah, I got mine yesterday, so.
Okay. Thank you all very much for public comment. We will take a break and recess until 1:30 this afternoon, but I just wanted to make sure.
I had a comment I'd like to ask Rebecca.
Sure, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on comment?
Ms. Rebecca?
Yes.
I know that when we talked about self-storage units, they're supposed to be in industrial areas, but PD allows them to be put into PD areas as well because it's negotiated. I don't see anything that actually talks about self-storage units from a distance from an existing residential subdivision. Is there something that you're working on, or is there a way we can address that, have more criteria?
I mean, if the board would like us to include a provision in there that, for self-storage, then we would have to add a provision under permitted uses. Currently, they're only allowed within industrial future land use and within our industrial zoning designations. So if you wanted to add that within Chapter 30 under permitted, we would have to.
Because I see it under PD as well.
So we had thought about adding design criteria within the PD section, but we're going to remove that for the final draft because we have no other PD, we have no other design criteria for other uses, and
It was a conversation that you and I had, and I didn't hear you discuss it, so you're discussing it, you're removing it. I'm fine, let's move on. Thank you.
Commissioner Herr.
Just a couple of things that were said as the afternoon progressed that I want to get on radar in terms of what's in my head. I do think there's an opportunity for us to improve, and I would ask the county manager to at least consider it at some point when the fire hose slows down that you're drinking from currently. The notion of transitioning from a developer to a homeowners association, we do have opportunity for improvement in that area. We've sat in the role as our family when we were too stupid to know not to be the president of the homeowners association, and ended up with a percolation pond that, I mean, really, you got a lawyer and an insurance person trying to figure out how to percolate stuff? Like, this is not a good idea. And so I do think that there's probably some level of, not regulation, but education that we should consider. And then I don't understand this, we haven't touched this for 25 years, and we're never going to touch it again for 25 years. The world is moving too fast for that, and I just want to get on the record that I don't think that's what our intention is that this is a major update, that there will be minor updates that take place as needed when we identify the need for that to happen. But that sort of became the truth as the afternoon progressed, which I don't think is what any of the five of us or the county manager are intending, or our staff. Nobody should put any future staff through what we put you through.
And to that point, we are going through the year-based amendment process, which is the major update to the comprehensive plan, and there will be, and we are planning on future updates to the land development code based on that. So some of these items that we spoke about today that weren't addressed with this revision, we're hoping to address those with the next revision, and that will be happening in the next couple of years. And like you said, it is a living document. If there are things that we change now that don't happen to work out, we can go back and fix it.
At any time.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. Just a couple of things that, while Rebecca's up here, that I didn't want to get into, but I think there were some subtle changes that just wanted to be pointed out. In the kennel, we now are calling them pets, not just dogs and cats.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that if there's 4 ferrets, three parrots, then you only get 3 dogs, or something like that. That's what the intent is.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, good.
3 ferrets and 3 dogs?
And a partridge and a pear tree.
That's 10. That's 10. That was in the 5 acres or more. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's only 9.
That's 3, and 4 is 10.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
3, 4, okay.
All right, any other?
Also, yes,
Okay.
also, the staff has brought forth, and is something that is very important, Commissioner Lockhart mentioned that she wants to drink her water, and I respect that. This is the opportunity, both in flooding and water quality, that we really need. They said they were going to bring it back in August, but whatever it's advanced septic system, whatever it is, we need, and we've got the holistic water policy that is coming forth at some point, but I want to applaud the staff for bringing forth the idea that the consistency that needs to be done both in the Wekiva protection area when it came to the trees, but also the septic tanks, but also the fact that we need to look at that whole thing so that we are in a situation where our lakes are polluted. Now, I'm not just talking about Seminole County. I will agree with Ms. Shaddix that she said that there are studies that Florida lakes are more polluted than any other lake in the United States, and we need to take measures to counteract that as soon as we possibly can.
And I will agree with you, Commissioner Constantine, and I will add that I think that the last penny sales tax initiative had millions and millions of dollars allocated toward specific lakes and water quality projects, and we're going to make sure that that continues to be a priority and actually gets implemented the way this board and the citizens intended.
And the last thing I wanted to say, thank you, and I agree with you. And the last thing I wanted to say is to concur with the fact that previous boards, not this board, previous boards have, sometimes worked with the philosophy of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so we did not look at our impact fees until 1990, until recently. We haven't looked at the land development codes until 1980. I think, as others have said, that trend needs to change. And not only do we make revisions as we deem it necessary, but we also have a comprehensive look at these things. I know we put it in the impact fees for, what was it, every 5 years now? I think, I'm not suggesting that that's what we do with here, but I think that we need to do it sooner than later. And one of the things that I talked to Ms. Hammack about is we need to look at sometimes, because as we talked about, 2007 has changed to today when it came to the airport. We need to look at some of our future uses in some of the properties, because circumstances have changed in certain areas, but we really haven't had a comprehensive look at future land uses in our comprehensive plan for a long, long time. And that's another thing that we should be looking at, too.
Before we recess, I do want to let you all know there was an email that each of our offices received from Michelle Dewey related to item number 33. The first paragraph has a presupposition in it that I've asked the county attorney to respond on all of our behalf so that we can make sure that her concerns get addressed with one voice. Just so you know, in case we're quickly trying to reply to her. Unless there's anything else that we need to address before we break for lunch, we'll come back and reconvene at 1:30. We good? All right, thank you so much.